Chapter 117. The next day, after receiving some rations, Su Xinxing and Wu Yejin said goodbye to the villagers and left the village. Under the guidance of the parrot, they went all the way to the place where Yuheim, the current manager of the Rainbow Island, lived. Because there was almost no means of transportation in this era. In fact, there were ox carts in the village, but the two were too embarrassed to ask the villagers for one. And Wu Yejin was sore all over after removing her magical girl status, so they moved very slowly. Su Xinxing, who couldn't bear to watch and was eager to return to the other world, finally decided to use his secret ultimate skill, the hero bullet train. Princess carry or being carried by me, choose one. Su Xinxing asked the girl who suggested resting. Hey, are there no other options? I don't want any of them. Five-Leaf Jinx was lying on a rock that was warm from the sun, squinting his eyes as he answered slowly. How willful can you be? It's all because of you that we're moving so slowly. The veins on Su Xinxing's forehead bulged, but he quickly calmed down and replied with a fake smile, I can also accept the shoulder carriage. Then I'll carry you, Wu Yejin finally compromised. Although the area of contact was the largest on the back, carrying her in a princess carry was much more awkward because he could see her face. That way, he wouldn't be able to slack off with a clear conscience. Okay. And so, Su Xinxing carried her on his back. You're so quick that it makes me feel uneasy. After getting familiar with Su Xinxing, this visitor from the other world, the girl found that although he was a little chunibyu, he was the type who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside, so it didn't matter if he spoke casually. Hi, you're overthinking it. Su Xinxing's face revealed a dangerous smile. Hold on tight, we're leaving. 9-bean sack. Speaking of which, what's the hero bullet train? The girl twisted her body uneasily and suddenly realized that she seemed to have neglected the most important part of the problem. In short, it's to grab the other person, then use my extraordinary physical strength as a hero to move forward at high speed. It sounds pretty good. By the way, my first companion was a mercenary. After experiencing the hero bullet train, he left behind a resignation letter and left quietly. I heard that he went back to his hometown to raise turtles. What? Without waiting for the girl to make any comments, Su Xinxing grabbed the bird flying to the side, stuffed it into the chest of his armor, and then ran away. Using the word run might be a bit of a mistake, because a second later, a shock wave similar to that of a supersonic plane surpassing the speed of sound appeared around his body. The girl, who was completely unprepared, was stunned by the situation. If it wasn't for the protection of Su Xinxing's armor, the terrifying wind alone would have been enough to blow the poor girl away. Even so, after reaching supersonic speed, the scenery in front of her was still frightening. There were no runways in this era, and the road was full of trees and stones. Su Xinxing had enough reflexes to dodge or jump over these things, but the girl's brain couldn't keep up. She was so scared that she was almost foaming at the mouth. Stop! I want to get off. Sorry, as an experienced driver, unless the car turns over, I won't stop on the way. The savior's voice sounded quite happy. Chapter 118. Did you really see the Dragon Palace? When Su Xinxing said that the Dragon Palace had been abandoned, the parrot subconsciously did not believe it. Shrines and the like were fine. After all, they were just places where humans worshipped the gods. When the gods no longer wanted to protect the land, they would leave. For example, they would possess a rice ear and elope with a merchant's carriage. That's right, most gods were like that. But the Dragon Palace was the palace of the dragon gods. Unless there were some special circumstances, it was almost impossible for it to be abandoned. Su Xinxing, who was questioned by the parrot, grabbed it with a kind expression, then raised the parrot and prepared to play with the water. Wait, I believe it. Whether Five-Leaf believes it or not, I believe it. The parrot shouted as it struggled. Could it be that it went bankrupt because of poor management? Compared to the parrot, Five-Leaf accepted the fact that the Dragon Palace had disappeared faster. She tried to guess. Then the dragon god could only go to the human city to work to pay his debts. Don't you have any reverence for the gods of your ancestors' time? The parrot complained with an embarrassed face. Because of what you did, my reverence for the gods has been thrown into the dustbin with common sense. Five-Leaf answered without hesitation. It seemed that the experience during this period of time had quite a big impact on the girl's worldview. So what should we do now? For the time being, I'm not good at perception. Su Xinxing, who was not in the mood to participate in their crosstalk, asked. Well, it would be good if we could find more clues near the Dragon Palace. The parrot touched its beak and pondered. Carefully examine the situation at the bottom of the sea? Su Xinxing drew his sword and made a chopping motion. If necessary, I can learn from Moses to open the sea. Really? In that case. The parrot was pleasantly surprised. Yes, but if you don't use enough strength, maybe nothing in this sea will survive. Thinking of the mushroom cloud slowly rising from the sea after he did that in the other world, Su Xinxing added. Let's walk around the sea and see if there are any clues. Therefore, the parrot decisively gave up the idea of exploring the bottom of the sea. Hearing what it said, Su Xinxing made a gesture of preparing to run and asked Wu Yejin, should we start the car? I will never sit in that seat again. The latter said in a resolute tone. Dividing line. After walking around the coastline for a while, the two of them, along with a bird, encountered a group of naughty children. They were yelling and teasing a turtle. Originally, Su Xinxing and his group did not intend to pay attention to this matter. However, when they passed by, the parrot suddenly made an unexpected sound. That guy, isn't he the messenger of Dragon Palace? It used its wings to point at the sea turtle, who had been turned over by the naughty children and was trying its best to stretch its neck to turn back. Isn't the envoy of the Dragon Palace an orphish? Wu Yejin asked curiously. No, when it comes to the Dragon Palace, turtles are more common. Prime Minister Turtle or something. Su Xinxing didn't have any special feelings about it. Well, although it's not a Prime Minister Turtle, the parrot seemed to find it difficult to explain clearly in a few words. In the end, it could only vaguely say, in short, it's just a pet of the dragon god. So, at this time, we should save the turtle first. Wu Yejin had just finished speaking when she revealed a puzzled expression. Wait, this déjà vu? Urashima Taro? As she spoke, the girl looked around as if she was looking for something. What's that? As a person of the Celestial Empire, Su Xinxing, who was not familiar with the myths of Fusang, asked curiously. You haven't even heard of Urashima Taro? What a country bumpkin. The parrot jumped onto Wu Yejin's head and puffed out its chest. Ignoring Su Xinxing's slightly narrowed and dangerous gaze, it said proudly, Urashima Taro is a well-known fairy tale in Fusang. The general plot goes like this. A person named Urashima Taro saved a turtle. The turtle was the envoy of the Dragon Palace. In order to repay his kindness, it brought Urashima Taro to the Dragon Palace. The master of the Dragon Palace also thanked Urashima Taro for saving the turtle, so he received the highest level of hospitality in the Dragon Palace. However, Urashima Taro began to miss home after staying for a while, so he bid farewell to the master of the Dragon Palace. Before he left, the master of the Dragon Palace gave Urashima Taro a brocade box and warned him not to open it. Such an obvious flag. In the end, that guy named Urashima Taro must have opened the box with his greedy hands, right? Su Xinxing raised his eyebrows. So what's inside? Disaster and plague? It's not Pandora's box. You're being too serious. Come down. Wu Yejin first complained. Then, she shook her head and tried to get the parrot off her head. The parrot flapped its wings and flew to a nearby reef. After Urashima Taro returned to his hometown, he realized that several hundred years had passed in the human world. His family, friends, and even his home were gone. Urashima Taro panicked and thought of the box given to him by the master of the Dragon Palace. He thought that he might be able to figure out what had happened if he opened it. In the end, when he opened the box, he turned into a white-haired old man with a white beard. It turned out that he had only spent a few days in the Dragon Palace, but several hundred years had passed in the outside world. The box given to Urashima Taro by the master of the Dragon Palace contained his time. Once he opened it, those 100 years slipped away quietly, turning Urashima Taro into an old man. After saying that, the parrot pointed at Su Xinxing. Very good. Student over there, what do you think this story tells us? The master of the Dragon Palace is not a good person. Should we kill her whenever we see her? Su Shenxing replied casually. Frong. The parrot made a big cross with its wings. Then, it thumped the ground and laughed. The answer is that we should not waste time indulging in leisure and pleasure. Time passes quickly when we have fun. In the blink of an eye, we become old. Even children know this. No, no, no. I think this story tells us that we won't die if we don't seek death. What do you think? Su Shenxing had a kind smile on his face as he grabbed the parrot. Then, steamed or braised. Which do you like? It's wrong to eat parrots. Let's have a good talk calmly. The parrot immediately gave in. It lowered its head and smiled submissively. Suddenly, the beach was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. I'm sorry to interrupt your happy time, but there doesn't seem to be anyone else around except for us. Besides, Wu Yejin sighed. Then she expressionlessly pointed at the group of naughty children not far away. If we don't hurry up, that sea turtle will be buried alive. Chapter 119. After chasing away the naughty kids, Su Shenxing held up the turtle and asked curiously, "Is this thing edible? Is it tasty? How do you eat it?" "You can eat it if you remove its head. It tastes like chicken and is crunchy." The parrot raised its wings at Su Shenxing. It probably wanted to give him a thumbs up, but unfortunately, birds don't have thumbs, so it couldn't do such a difficult action. This voice. Is it Lord Debater? Don't eat me. I pulled the cable for the treasure ship. I contributed to the Dragon Palace. You can't do this. I want to see Lord Ebishu. As soon as it heard the parrot's voice, the turtle struggled to move its oar-like limbs. Don't be nervous. They're just joking with you. The kind-hearted Viola Multicolored Leaf, or rather, the only conscience in the team, couldn't stand it and said to Su Shenxing, "Stop joking, please put it down." "TSK, I can't eat it?" Su Shenxing put the turtle back on the beach with a look of regret. This guy is actually serious. Even Wu Yejin was scared. "Dragon Palace messenger, we have something to ask Her Highness Odoheim, but the Dragon Palace has been abandoned. Can you tell us what happened?" When it came to business, the parrot was a lot more serious. The turtle sighed, then looked at Su Shenxing and Wu Yejin, and asked in a puzzled tone, "It's a bit complicated. By the way, who are these two?" "They're my friends. It's okay, they can be trusted. If you have something to say, just say it," the parrot answered without hesitation. "Okay, since they are Lord Debater's friends, of course I can trust them." The turtle turned around and slowly crawled on the ground. "It's a long story. I'll take you directly to Her Highness Odoheim. Although I feel that you've spent more time climbing than you've said, that's all." Su Shenxing shrugged noncommittally. Then he went up and grabbed the turtle again. Hey, you still haven't given up on eating it." Wu Yejin couldn't help but look embarrassed. "Of course not. I just don't have the time to wait for it to crawl to Odoheim, so I let it show me the way, and I'll take it." Su Shenxing responded with dissatisfaction. "Don't forget, I'm very good at leading people." Hearing him say this, the girl's face turned pale as if she had recalled a nightmare. "Oh, thank you so much. As expected of Lord Debater's friend, you are indeed very friendly." The sea turtle, unaware of the impending disaster, swung its limbs and appeared to be very happy. About 10 seconds later. "In my next life, if only I could still be a tortoise." Sea turtle. Dividing line. According to the messenger of Dragon Palace, Odoheim should live here. In front of a small village not far from the sea, Parrot, who had been busy for most of the day, landed on the torch that was used to illuminate the village at night. It was still in an extinguished state, and made a gesture of relief. "Are you blaming me?" Su Shenxing shrugged innocently. "If I don't blame you, then blame me." Unlike Parrot, who had wings to fly, and Su Shenxing, who had unlimited physical strength, Wu Yejin was already exhausted after half a day. Because after the sea turtle woke up, it swore that it would never leave the sea again while muttering, "The land is so scary." Debater and Wu Yejin tried to persuade it, but it was useless. In the end, they could only ask the sea turtle for the place where dragon god Odoheim lived now, and let them find it themselves. By the way, after that, the fear of the land was deeply rooted in the sea turtle's heart, and even imprinted on the DNA level so that in the future, unless the sea turtle reproduced, it would almost never go to the land. So after that, no one had ever come to the Dragon Palace, probably because of this. Originally, they thought that it would take a lot of effort to find Otoheim in the village. Unexpectedly, not long after entering the village, they met the other party who was drying cloth on the drying pole outside the house. Now, Otoheim was wearing a rough kimono like an ordinary woman. Her beautiful black hair was casually tied into a bun, and she held a wooden bucket full of kunbu in her hand. But even so, her face, which was about 20 years old and without makeup, still had a peerless beauty. "Who are you?" Otoheim, whose identity was exposed by Parrot, looked at the people with a vigilant look on her face. "I say, Otoheim, can't you even recognize my voice? In the past, I used to sit on a treasure ship and sail on your Amber Creek." Parrot greeted the other party quite familiarly. "Treasure ship, 7 blessings god?" This voice. Could it be Lord Binkai? Otoheim thought for a moment and remembered Parrot's identity. "Yes, it's me." Seeing that the other party recognized him, Parrot couldn't help but be happy. "It's not easy to find you. If it weren't for the fact that the Dragon Palace messenger was being bullied, we wouldn't have known that you came here." "So that's how it is it a turtle?" Hearing Parrot's words, Otoheim understood how the group of people in front of her found her. At this time, an old voice came from the wooden house behind her. "Otoheim, is there a guest?" Then, the door curtain like a straw mat was opened, and an old man walked out with a cane. Because the standard of living in ancient Fusang was not good, like other places in this era, the average lifespan of human beings was very short, about 40 years old. Even the old man in the village before was actually only 50 years old. But now, the old man in front of Su Shenxing could be called old even in modern times. "Taro, why did you come out?" Otoheim put the wooden bucket in her hand on the ground and hurried to the old man's side to support him. "Your body is not like before, you have to go back to bed and lie down quickly." It's okay, I feel much better today than yesterday, even if I come out for a walk, it's no problem." The old man waved his hand and said with a smile. "No. Wasn't he unable to even walk steadily? Go back to bed, when you are better, we will go to your favorite seaside to see the sea." But the girl was not swayed by the old man's words at all, but like a nurse, she used a gentle but firm tone to persuade the old man to go back to the house. The two people and the parrot who had witnessed all of this were silent. Even Su Shenxing frowned. Although he was not proficient in curses, he could feel the unusual curse power of the old man. After Otoheim returned to the outside of the house, Parrot asked hesitantly, "Your Highness Otoheim, what is going on? That person just now." Otoheim didn't know how to answer, was silent for a long time, and finally sighed. "He is my husband, Urashima Taro." Chapter 120. Wu Yejin, who had grown up listening to Urashima Taro's story, had a subtle expression of disbelief when Otoheim admitted it. "That's not right. We took the ship for the 7 blessings a few years ago. At that time, weren't you still in the Dragon Palace? Even if you fell in love with a human, you wouldn't fall in love with an old man like that, right?" Parrot, who also could not accept it, asked. Before we married, he was just an ordinary young man. It's just that humans can't fall in love with gods. After he accepted my love, he was punished by the gods and became what he is now." Otoheim looked a little sad. She stood there numbly, and there was a hint of sadness in her voice. "But there are many stories in Japanese mythology about gods marrying human girls, right? I thought that the story about how humans and gods can't fall in love was in Hwaxia mythology, just like the cowherd and the weaver girl." Wu Yejin immediately raised her doubts. "Is there? But I don't remember such a thing happening." Otoheim asked doubtfully. Parrot flew to Wu Yejin's shoulder, poked the girl's cheek, and whispered, "Those stories have almost never happened in this era. And even if there are such stories in the future, if the gods don't use some loopholes to elevate the other human into a god, for example, Susanoo elevating people including Kita Inada, Shimming Foot, and Shimming Hand into gods, to avoid being punished by the gods, it's just a simple misunderstanding. After all, the conditions to elevate a human into a god in Japan are more relaxed." But Susanoo was one of the 3 noble sons. The dragon god of Hupa Chuan did not have this ability. So, he could only watch his lover become a white-haired old man helplessly. After listening to Parrot's explanation, Wu Yejin showed an apologetic expression to Otoheim. If you really love that person, leaving him now may be the right choice. Parrot suggested, although there is no way to completely eliminate the divine punishment, the degree will certainly be reduced. It's already too late. Otoheim gently stroked her flat belly. Her face was full of motherly love. We already have a child. Even if we leave him now, there is no way to weaken the divine punishment. So even if I leave Dragon Palace behind, I will spend the last time with him. For a moment, the parrot and Wu Yejin were speechless. At this point, there was really nothing more to say. Could he still persuade Otoheim to abort the child? Actually, it's not completely impossible. Su Xinxing, who was leaning against the wooden wall, stroked his chin and suddenly said, "No, it's better to say that there are many ways." Really? Otoheim's eyes widened in surprise. Although it's called a heavenly punishment, it's essentially a curse. I've encountered more powerful curses than this more than once. Even though it wasn't of much use to him. After swallowing this sentence, Su Xinxing went on to say, as long as there is a way to remove the curse, your husband can return to his original appearance. Then can you remove this curse? Otoheim quickly asked. Su Xinxing replied very simply. Then what the hell are you talking about? Although no one said so, Su Xinxing always felt that the other people's eyes revealed the same meaning. Is there any other solution? Probably afraid that Su Xinxing would be angry, Otoheim hurriedly asked. The effect of this curse seems to be to continue to devour vitality. In other words, as long as your husband can obtain vitality that is far beyond ordinary people, he can naturally ignore this curse. Su Xinxing coughed and continued to explain. Reasonably speaking, even if he didn't have that kind of curse resistance, with his vitality, he could at least carry 180 of this type of curse, and then continue to be alive and well, even if you say so. Otoheim looked helpless. Her current mood was like a primary school student who couldn't finish her homework on time because she played Watcher's ass and asked on the internet, "How can I not hand in my homework?" In the end, the other person replied, "Just blow up the school." Although there was no need to hand in homework by doing so, there were still many problems before that. In short, the primary school student probably couldn't make any expression except for a confused face. No, although the previous method to remove the curse is impossible, if it is just to replenish vitality, there is actually a way. The parrot suddenly said. Thus, everyone's eyes were focused on it. The elixir of immortality. So the parrot slowly said what it thought. Bamboo Monogatari? Wu Yejin thought of a popular story in Japan. But didn't that story take place in the Nara era? Although Bamboo Monogatari was basically a work of fiction, the prototype of the characters was basically from the Nara era, which was at least a few hundred years later than the current mythological era. Sufu? Su Xinxing, as a person of the Celestial Empire, thought of another story, Su Fu, who crossed the sea to the east to ask for the elixir of immortality for the first emperor. Yes, that gentleman went to Penglai, the mythical island in Huaxia, and really did ask for the elixir of immortality, and he is now in Japan. As a person of the future, the parrot of the future bird obviously knew more than a native like Otoheim. If we can ask him for the elixir of immortality, there is no better way to cure this kind of divine punishment. Let me make it clear first, we are not going to help you get the elixir of immortality. Su Xinxing narrowed his eyes and looked at Otoheim, whose eyes were glowing with a strange light. I came to find you just to find the way back to Auravia. I don't have time to help you find the elixir of immortality. Then his eyes fell on the parrot. You understand, right? If you insist on doing this kind of role-playing game like running around and stalling for time, I am afraid I will take a slightly more radical approach to find the way back. Although the parrot did not know what the so-called slightly more radical approach was, it could not help but shudder when it understood that Su Xinxing was not joking and hurriedly nodded. I am sorry, Your Highness Otoheim. As you can see, we are now on our way to Takamagara, and can't help you find the elixir of immortality. The parrot spread its wings at Otoheim. It's okay, I will find the master of Huaxia on my own. This shows my sincerity. As for Taro, it should be no problem for the villagers to take care of him. Otoheim looked at the cold Su Shinxing, and then nodded at the parrot to show that she understood. As for the island of the beginning of the rainbow, I will let the Dragon Palace messenger take you there, but I am afraid there is a situation on the island that is more troublesome than the elixir of immortality. Su Shinxing and the others did not answer, and just waited for Otoheim to continue. Otoheim did not continue to keep them in suspense, and explained the situation. A group of ghosts have moved to that island, and the leader is Shutendaji. You know how strong those guys are, right? Even if it is the Imperial Thunder God or Susanoo, I am afraid there is no way to defeat those ghosts living on the island. Oh, then it's okay, you can let the turtle lead the way. The parrot replied calmly. Don't you understand what I mean? Ghosts and a large group of them. No, you are the only one who does not understand the situation, Otoheim. Wu Yejin next to her muttered in her heart. No matter how strong those ghosts are, as long as they use, the other party does not want to talk to you, and through Su Shinxing at you, they will be wiped out. Compared to running around the map to find the elixir of immortality, this is much simpler. Chapter 121. As it was getting late, Su Shinxing and the others did not leave the village in a hurry. Instead, they stayed in Otoheim's house for the time being. Besides, Otoheim also needed time to say goodbye to Urashima Taro. At night, Wu Yejin felt someone shaking her awake. She opened her eyes and found the parrot dancing samba on her quilt. After smashing the parrot down with a pillow, she was about to go back to sleep. However, the parrot persevered and ran to her bedside. Wake up. I have something to show you. Wu Yejin felt that she had not been able to sleep well since she came to the age of mythology. The last time she loaded the file, the whole village was destroyed by Orochi. Even if she killed Orochi with the help of Su Shinxing, the banquet in the village lasted until quite late. The next day, because Su Shinxing was burning with anxiety, she did not have enough rest at all. Now that she could finally sleep well, she was disturbed by the parrot. Although she was somewhat dissatisfied, Wu Yejin still yawned and forced herself to get out of bed. What the hell is going on? The girl rubbed her eyes and followed the parrot out of the house. She asked in a daze. Girl, don't you think you are too weak as a magical girl? The parrot said righteously. How can you fight against the tentacles like this? Has the opponent been limited to that kind of thing? Apologize to all the magical girl anime in the world. The girl ridiculed the parrot in a daze, and then yawned again. And the magical girl you made did not have any powerful moves in the first place. That's why I asked you to come out now. You will know the reason in a while. Now just shut up and come with me. The parrot flapped its wings and flew in front. Wu Yejin had a lot of questions, but since the parrot said so, she could only follow it in confusion. The two kept walking, left the village, passed through the coconut forest outside the village, and finally came to a beach. Facing the sea, the sound of the tide could be heard. The sea at night was different from the beauty of the day. The darkness gave a different kind of profound and mysterious feeling. There was a person on the sea. Wu Yejin narrowed her eyes and could barely see the figure of the other person. It was Otoheim. However, unlike the civilian dress during the day, Otoheim had changed back into the dress of a dragon god. Although her clothes were still kimono, they were gold and silver thread, full of beautiful patterns and long sleeves. She wore a crown made of coral and tortoiseshell, and in her hands, a flute and a bell inlaid with various gems. At this time, Otoheim looked solemn, dancing on the sea. The sea breeze did not lessen because of the arrival of night. Instead, it seemed to grow stronger, and the waves became even more turbulent. However, the young girl was walking as if she was walking on flat ground, and the waves did not affect her in the slightest. Her dance was so beautiful that after looking at her, all other sounds in the world seemed to disappear, leaving only this beautiful person spinning and jumping on the surface of the sea, performing one stunning dance after another. She did not know when, but the wind and waves calmed down. The thick clouds in the sky gradually dispersed, and strands of silver moonlight hung down from the sky like the highest grade of silk, making the originally dark sea sparkling like a stage. Jinx suddenly discovered that there were specks of light that looked like fireflies floating out from the surface of the sea. These specks of light were of different colors, and they slowly revolved around the girl. As the number of specks of light increased, they decorated the surface of the sea with a dazzling beauty like the Milky Way. At the same time, the entire scene was filled with a dreamy aura. It even made Jinx wonder if she was dreaming. Those dots of light. The parrot's voice brought Wu Yejin back to reality, but the beautiful scene still took away her gaze, and she could not bear to look away. Every one of them is the soul of a creature that died in the sea during this time. After her brain understood the meaning of the parrot's words, the girl turned her head in shock and looked at the parrot. Although it is not something to be proud of, Japan's reincarnation system is mostly based on the existence of the underworld in Huaxia. The parrot laughed self-deprecatingly. Do you know why there are so many gods in Japan? The reason is simple. If there were not so many gods to send the souls of the dead into reincarnation, the human world of Japan would soon be filled with the souls of creatures. Finally, it would be eroded by the kingdom of the Yellow Springs and become a country of only the dead. In fact, even if there are so many gods, the souls that have just died here occasionally do not enter reincarnation in time. In the end, they rely on some messy things to become the so-called 99 gods. In other words, Lord Otoheim is now sending those souls into reincarnation. Wu Yejin understood the meaning of the girl's actions. Then the question is, why is it that after modern times, the number of gods in the world has sharply decreased, but Japan has not become a country of the dead? The parrot first nodded to confirm Wu Yejin's words, then raised its wings and asked, "Why?" Wu Yejin did not want to guess at all. She just looked at the parrot and asked, "Because there are others who perform the duties of the gods on behalf of the gods." The parrot didn't intend to keep them in suspense, so it answered straightforwardly, "Although there are no gods in the modern world, their shrines still exist, and their agents, the priests and witches in the shrines, will perform a blessing ceremony or divine music dance. Even if they do not understand the meaning, it does not matter if it is purely for commercial purposes. As long as these two symbolic acts are completed, those souls will be sent to reincarnation." "Then why did you ask me to get up? To watch Otoheim dance?" Wu Yejin did not understand the parrot's explanation and could only ask in the end. "Of course not." The parrot suddenly flew up and shouted at Otoheim. "Your Highness Otoheim, although I am a little sorry, I have something to ask of you." Probably the ceremony was coming to an end. Otoheim finally jumped 2 steps, and the surrounding lights all disappeared. She looked at the parrot curiously. "What is it, Lord Eloquence? If it is possible, can you teach the divine music dance you just performed to this girl?" The parrot pointed with its beak to Wu Ye. Wu Yejin felt as if she had been tricked again. Chapter 122. Wow, I can't stand on the water at all. It's better to talk about why I can stand on the water after transforming. Wu Yi was receiving special training from Otoheim on the sea. Although she said so, the actual situation was that the girl kept falling and plunging into the sea. But even so, Wu Yejin only complained verbally and had no intention of giving up. After watching her for a while on the coconut tree, the parrot spread its wings and flew to the other side of the beach. Because it was blocked by the reef, it was like a visual blind spot. Wu Yejin couldn't see the situation here. Su Shenxing stood there leaning against the reef. Although she's a clumsy girl, she still works hard, right? The parrot seemed to want to land on Su Shenxing's shoulder, but the latter glanced at it and it landed on the reef washed by the tide. "I'm just wondering why you came out so late." "Out of vigilance, I followed to take a look." Su Shenxing crossed his arms and said silently, "Oh, it's really hard for you." The parrot looked past Su Shenxing and looked at the behemoth floating in the sea not far away, which was also in Wu Yejin's visual blind spot. It was a monster called the Great Gluttonous Beast. This monster was simply a giant octopus. In the legend of Fusang, the Great Gluttonous Beast was a monster that was extremely obsessed with women. It once appeared in a place called the Great Third Island Milk Point near the modern area of Shikoku. There was a beautiful 17-year-old girl named Abang. The great gluttonous beast coveted her beauty. When she went to wash clothes, it suddenly appeared and threatened the girl to be its wife. If she didn't agree, it would summon a storm to set off a huge wave to destroy Abang's village. Abang was shocked. She quickly said to the great gluttonous beast that she really couldn't accept the other party's 8 legs. If there were only 2 legs, she could bear it. She asked the great gluttonous beast to cut off one of her legs every day. When there were only 2 legs left, she would marry it. Denyenzu agreed to Abang's suggestion, and every night he would appear and cut off one of Abang's legs. Abang's father was an expert fisherman. After Abang told him about the situation, he made preparations to sharpen his harpoon until it was sharp. 6 days later, when the great gluttonous beast only had 2 legs left and was about to kidnap Abang, he would step in to stop it. If possible, he would directly kill the monster. However, 6 days later, when Abang cut off the 6th leg of the giant beast used its remaining tentacles to wrap around Abang and dragged the girl into the sea. No matter how hard her father dived, he could not find her. Since then, Abang's father would dive into the water from the place where Abang was abducted to look for his daughter, while Abang's mother would cry there. In the end, both of them disappeared, leaving behind only 2 reefs named Grandpa Rock and Po Rock. During the 7 Blessings God's visit, this guy also showed up, but he was scared off by Dehei and Ebisu. Some gods with authority related to the sea also tried to suppress the sky, but because they could not find it, they gave up. Who would have thought that it would die in such a place today, and from the way it was neatly cut in half from the middle, it was not hard to tell who did it. It seemed that this guy was attracted by the magical girl set and wanted to ambush Wu Yejin from the bottom of the sea, but it did not expect to run into Su Shinxing. Don't misunderstand, I just happened to want to eat octopus. Su Shinxing saw the parrot looking at the monster's corpse, and could not help but snort coldly, turned around and walked into the village. Then you don't want to eat? I suddenly lost my appetite. Su Shinxing did not turn around. And there is no material for octopus here. Let me tell you, although the giant tortoise itself is not that delicious, the parasites on its body are similar to the 8-eyed eel in both appearance and taste. They are very delicious, and are especially suitable for yushu and barbecue. The parrot used its small claws to point at the giant tortoise's corpse. Can you eat parasites? Su Shinxing replied casually. He did not stop walking because he did not want to taste the parasites in the parrot's mouth. You really don't know how to enjoy life. The parrot shook its head and sighed. Then it used a slightly more serious voice to talk to Su Shinxing, who only looked at it from the back. Also, according to Miss Wu Ye's temperament, she must have practiced until very late today. She will definitely oversleep tomorrow. I don't know what you are in a hurry about, but if it is possible, can you leave a little later tomorrow? Hearing the parrot's words, Su Shinxing stopped and turned around to look at the bird. I wanted to ask before. From the story that the girl told me, you don't have a special relationship with her, right? But why do I feel like you are always protecting her? Is it that obvious? The parrot began to play dumb. Do you want me to lift some chestnuts? Su Shinxing narrowed his eyes and stared at the parrot. Although the parrot did it secretly, Zhang Zian's observation skills were not bad, and he still found some evidence. Well, as expected of you. You are much more sensitive than ordinary people. Seeing that Su Shinxing's expression did not seem to be joking, the parrot could only raise its wings and surrender. Speaking of Wu Yejin, its expression became gentler. If I must say, this child's life was messed up by me. If it weren't for me, she would still be living an ordinary and happy life. So when I face her, I always feel a little guilty. And even if it weren't for this relationship, she is still a child worthy of my life. Su Shinxing always felt that the parrot's words had a hidden meaning. Unfortunately, analyzing the deep meaning of other people's words was not his strong point. This made Su Shinxing miss his friends in the other world. Presumably, the guy who was immersed in palace politics all year round could easily analyze the parrot's meaning. Su Shinxing had always followed the excellent principle of thinking about things that he did not understand. So he turned around and continued to walk towards the village. After 2 steps, he stopped, as if he suddenly remembered something, and said, "Because it took me a lot of effort to kill that octopus, I will get up a little later tomorrow. That's all. Thank you very much." The parrot bowed and thanked him. "Don't get me wrong, I didn't do it for her," Su Shinshing subconsciously replied, but when he said it, he felt something was wrong. But it was too troublesome to explain, so he simply snorted to cover up his embarrassment and quickly returned to the village. Chapter 123. The next day, Wu Yejin woke up early in the morning and felt sore all over. Last night, she barely mastered the most basic movements of the Kagura dance. This was based on the fact that after she almost drowned, she suddenly realized that the Kagura dance had nothing to do with the sea. There was no need to learn how to maintain balance on the sea. Looking at the sun, she found that it was almost noon, which surprised the girl a little. That visitor from another world called Su Shinshing had always urged them to move forward like a ghost. He even came up with something like the brave bullet train. How could he be so obedient today and let them sleep so late? When she thought of the so-called hero high-speed train, the girl couldn't help but turn pale. Then, she tried to put aside the unpleasant riding experience in her mind, changed her clothes and walked out of the bedroom. It turned out that it was indeed almost noon, because Miss Otoheim had already prepared lunch under the command of the parrot. As a god, Otoheim was able to provide her family with white rice. So, lunch was just plain white rice and eel fiaki. In addition, the girl felt that Su Shinshing's eyes were strange when he looked at the eel. "Hey, you don't eat this?" Seeing that Su Shinshing was just eating white rice with miso soup, Wu Yejin couldn't help but poke the eel and ask him. This eel was soft and delicious, and the oil was very light. It was a bit like the star eel, but more delicious. This made the girl, who didn't have much appetite because of her sore body, hungry. "You eat it, I'm allergic to seafood." "Liar, you obviously ate the seafood rice that Enadaheim gave you with relish yesterday." The girl looked at Su Shinshing, whose eyes were wandering, and showed a suspicious look. But until the end, she didn't ask anything. She just heard him muttering something about parasites. What a timid guy. There weren't many parasites in marine fish, and it wasn't sashimi. What was there to be afraid of when it was cooked? After lunch, naturally, they would act according to the original plan. After saying goodbye to Otoheim, the group embarked on the journey to the beginning of the rainbow. "Do you want to take the hero high-speed train?" Su Shinshing was eager to try. "Can this joke end here?" The girl firmly refused. Dividing line, it's surprisingly far. They walked for a long time in the direction Otoheim indicated, but they still did not see the village that Otoheim said could be used as a reference. Su Shinshing scratched his head impatiently. "Is this direction really okay?" "Of course. Don't forget that I'm a bird that can circle the earth to deliver letters. My sense of direction is definitely not a problem." The parrot patted its chest and promised. "Isn't that a pigeon?" Wu Yejin complained while panting. Compared to Su Shinshing and the flying parrot, her physical strength was obviously much worse, even when she transformed into a magical girl. "That's right. He's a distant relative." "No, there must be reproductive isolation." After chatting for a while as they walked, Su Shinshing's expression became even more puzzled. "Parrot, can't you fly up and see where the village is?" Really, such a suspicious man won't accept any reason. The parrot had a look of annoyance on its face. "Shut up. It's none of your business. Just do it." After the parrot had no choice but to fly up to the sky to investigate, it stayed at the top of the tree. After a few seconds of silence, it squeezed out a smile and said to the two, "Bad news, we seem to be lost. There's no village nearby at all. The guy who patted his chest and promised just now, get down here." "No. You definitely want to teach me a lesson with that expression of yours." "How could that be? I'm not such a fierce person." "Ah, speaking of which, it's almost dinner time. What do you think of roast parrot for dinner?" "Am I a reserve food?" "You actually sentenced me to death without even giving me a chance to repent. 3 seconds is enough for you to repent. Isn't that no sincerity at all?" The parrot made a lot of noise at the top of the tree and refused to come down. Su Shinxing, who had wasted a lot of time because of it, finally couldn't hold back anymore. Blue veins appeared on his forehead, burning with anger. "If you don't come down, then I'll go up." He snorted coldly and bent his knees slightly. Then he exerted force on his feet and leaped toward the parrot like a rocket leaving the bowstring. Then, because he didn't have any brakes, he continued to fly like a rocket leaving the bowstring, creating a human-shaped hole in the canopy that looked like a cat and a mouse. After that, he flew far into the forest in front of him. The parrot and Wu Yejin looked at each other speechlessly. After a while, the parrot asked worriedly, "That guy, he won't fly into a rage out of humiliation and really roast me, right?" Wu thought for a moment. According to Su Shinxing's arrogant and prideful personality, there was a good chance that his guess would come true after such a big embarrassment. "Anyway, let's split up and look for him." The parrot's tone was sad. "Little girl, if you find him, just tell Qiankio in the sky and I'll be able to sense it." "Well, take care." Wu didn't know how to comfort the parrot in the end. Parting line: a safe landing. Compared to those bastards who used magic cannons to send me into the Demon King's army's sky fortress, this is much easier. Su Shinxing broke a few branches and fell straight down from the top of a banyan tree. In the end, he displayed his unexpected balance and landed steadily after performing a difficult move that would get him full marks in any gymnastics competition. This startled a person who was starting a fire under the banyan tree. Su Shinxing took a closer look and realized that it was a girl. Her thick black hair was tied into a single ponytail, and a silk ribbon embroidered with peaches was tied around her forehead. Her face was quite delicate and cute. She wore a dress that was a cross between Joho and Haori, with a katana and a small cloth bag tied around her waist. This kind of masculine attire not only didn't make her lose points, but also added a touch of youth and vitality to her. At this time, her small cherry mouth was slightly open, as if she was surprised by Su Shinxing's appearance. In the past 2 days of traveling with Wu Yi and the others, Su Shinxing's hostility had dissipated a lot. Naturally, he wouldn't attack anyone he saw. In fact, he wouldn't attack anyone he saw, but Wu Yi and the others were too suspicious at that time. As he removed the leaves from his body and the twigs from his hair, he opened his mouth to explain. However, the girl was one step ahead of him and interrupted him. "Fell from the tree. Could it be that you're Mr. Monkey?" Su Shinxing was speechless. Just how rude was this girl? Did she think that he was a monkey just because he fell from a tree? Although Su Shinxing knew that he wasn't a handsome guy or a little fresh meat, he was still a passerby with average looks. This had nothing to do with a monkey. Wait, could it be that this girl was naturally black? Su Shinxing looked at the girl's delicate face and cute smile, and couldn't help but feel that he had discovered the truth of the world. Chapter 124. Mr. Monkey, here's a glutinous rice ball." Just as Su Shinxing was confused because the other party thought of him as a monkey, the girl dug into her small pocket, took out a glutinous rice ball, and handed it to him. "What kind of new trick is this?" Su Shinxing stared at the glutinous rice ball, but he didn't find any curse on it. Although to him, curses and mayonnaise were the same, they were just seasonings. He looked up at the smiling girl again, and finally he picked up the glutinous rice ball and swallowed it. It tasted good, but nothing happened. "Mr. Monkey, you ate my glutinous rice ball, so we are friends," the girl said with a smile. "Damn, I don't understand the logic of, I beat you, so we are friends." Su Shinxing was still confused, and he suddenly felt that he shouldn't eat that thing. Then, a thought flashed through his mind. Is this the legendary badger game? It seems a bit wrong, but it's almost the same meaning. "Sorry, I have something to do." So Su Shinxing put on a faceless face and raised his hand to the girl. "I'm in a hurry, so I'll leave first." "Are you leaving, Mr. Monkey?" The girl waved at Su Shinxing, "Then go." How to say it, the light tone and the healing smile always made people feel out of place in the dark forest. This made Su Shinxing sigh involuntarily. "Although I don't know why you are here, I advise you to leave the forest." Even Su Shinxing, who was not good at sensing auras, sensed the auras of more than 10 kinds of abnormal creatures in the forest. Although it was not particularly strange for supernatural creatures to appear in the forest, it was unusual for them to appear in such a dense group. Sorry, I haven't finished what I want to do, so I can't go home. The girl continued to speak in a slow voice. Su Shinxing scratched his messy hair in annoyance, but in the end, he still couldn't stop worrying about her. What's the matter? If it's not too much of a waste of time, I can help a little. Just take it as a reward for that glutinous rice ball. Speak of vengeance. Young miss, it's a little scary for you to say such things with a smile on your face. My home used to be in a small village in this forest. Some time ago, I left because my friend Mr. Ngang had forged a good saber. I went to the capital of Ping, and to watch and celebrate, so I left here. I didn't expect that during this period of time, a group of wandering ghosts destroyed my hometown. My grandfather and grandmother, who raised me, also died in their hands. In the end, those monsters occupied the island in the sea. A hint of sadness appeared on the girl's face. She gently touched the small pouch on her waist. I found these glutinous rice balls in the ruins of my hometown. They are the only things my grandmother left behind. Was this another pitiful person who had lost his home and loved ones because of the monsters? No matter which world it was, there would always be such unfortunate people. It was to prevent such tragedies that he became a hero, wasn't it? Su Shinxing sighed. At this time, he felt that something was wrong. Wait, you're saying that your home used to be in this small village in the forest? Those ghosts who destroyed the village ran to the island in the sea not far away, right? Yes, that's right. Mr. Monkey's memory is really bad. Do you need me to say it again? Su Shinxing's eyes twitched. This guy was really naturally evil, right? In short, although it was unintentional, but he still obtained information about the origin of the rainbow. In this case, Su Shinxing would not let the girl go to the island alone. Well, in short, for various reasons, I will go with you to the island of ghosts and help you kill those guys. But Mr. Monkey, you look very sad. I just don't want you to say that. Su Shinxing stared at the girl and found that he could not detect the slightest trace of supernatural power from the girl. But you, if you're just an ordinary girl, it's better to stay in the village. I know a village nearby. The villagers there are all good people. Mr. Monkey is really just Mr. Monkey. The girl made a big cross with her hands, and her eyes narrowed as if she was very happy. What do you mean by that? I said, if you always treat people like monkeys, even I will get angry. Because, I'm not a girl, my name is Mama Taro, I'm a real man. Su Shinxing looked at the girl. No, the boy, dumbfounded. Ah, if you don't believe me, do you want to touch it? Hey, where do you want to touch? Earthworms. No need. For a moment, Su Shinxing felt that he was really great to be able to defeat evil thoughts. Dividing line. The first to find Su Shinxing was Wu Yejin. When the girl found him, Su Shinxing was doing an O to Z under a tree, and he was muttering to himself, I hate girls who force themselves on men. Lucifer is coming to reap. No, that guy can't beat me. And so on. Next to him, there was a cute girl sitting in a sports position, looking at Su Shinxing with great interest. Is it puppy sauce this time? Before Wu Yejin could say anything, the girl found her first and showed a warm smile. Who's puppy sauce? Wu Yejin immediately complained reflexively. Wu Yejin did not expect to be called by this nickname after returning to the mythological era, which made her feel a little hurt. Because it's very cute this, the girl put her hands on both sides of her head and made ears. It's exactly the same as a puppy's ears, so it's called puppy sauce. It's not a good habit to give people nicknames casually. Wu Yejin said helplessly, although I don't care, some people will be angry. If puppy sauce doesn't matter, then it's puppy sauce. It's a motor, I accidentally got involved. Wu Yi held her head and said regretfully. Hey, puppy sauce, do you want to eat glutinous rice dumplings? Glutinous rice dumplings? Wu Yejin looked up and stared at the dumplings in the girl's hands, and then looked at the symbolic peach ribbon on the girl's head. She could not help but swallow. That, although it's unlikely, you're not Mama Taro, are you? Chapter 125. I feel like my childhood has collapsed. Unlike Su Shenxing, who didn't understand Fusang fairy tales, Wu Yejin grew up listening to these kinds of stories. It could be said that these fairy tales shaped a girl's worldview. She just didn't expect that she would encounter something that overturned her worldview when she was 16 years old. She hugged her knees and sat next to Su Shenxing, looking like she had lost her soul. Momotaro is actually such a cute trap. It's okay, you'll get used to it. The parrot, who was treated as a pheasant by Momotaro, calmly accepted this result. It ate the glutinous rice dumpling with a clear conscience. Speaking of glutinous rice dumplings, I still prefer soy sauce dumplings, chewing. This kind of thing is fine no matter what. Wu Yejin raised her head and looked at Momotaro, who was enjoying himself by roasting dumplings. She couldn't help but have a headache. In the story, Momotaro is super strong. He defeated the entire Ghost Clan on Ghost Island alone. But this guy, it's already very good if he doesn't drag us down. Wait, little Miss Wei, don't tell me that you don't realize that you belong to the group of dragging us down? The parrot made a surprised face. Don't be long-winded. In any case, other than that guy who is reorganizing his worldview, we are all dragging him down, aren't we? But at least you and I have the ability to protect ourselves. But Momotaro isn't just an ordinary weak girl, no, weak man. Wu Yejin argued with a red face. Most of the time, it's hard to tell whether someone is strong or weak. Even that visitor from another world isn't good at distinguishing the strength of others. Maybe Momotaro just looks weak, but he's actually super strong? The parrot persuaded. But Wu Yi still wanted to say something, but when she turned around to look at Momotaro, she saw a huge blackbird shadow suddenly appear behind him. Although she didn't know what it was, there was no doubt that its target was Momotaro. Be careful. Just as Wu Yejin warned, Su Shenxing stood up. His expression returned to its previous indifference, and his right hand was already on the hilt of his sword. However, at this moment, the blade flashed. When Wu Yejin noticed it, Momotaro had already slowly put the tachi back into the scabbard. Immediately, the shadow of the huge bird behind him also split into two. The bird's head covered with black feathers rolled out of the shadow. Oh, it's actually Shernan. I didn't expect to find such a rare monster in this kind of place. The parrot clicked its tongue in wonder. Is this the kind of monster in The Matter of You Shooting Strange Birds? Viola Cordifolia, who had read the Book of Peace, immediately recalled the contents of the book and asked, "What does it have to do with me? What kind of lousy name is that?" Su Shenxing frowned. Therefore, the parrot and the five-leaf pansy cast a contemptuous look at this guy who had shallow knowledge. However, in the end, Viola kindly explained the story to Su Shenxing. To put it simply, it was the story of a strange bird called Aizu Shinto that was chirping noisily on the roof of the Japanese emperor's palace. Then, a man named Iwasaki Jiro was ordered to shoot it down with a bow and arrow. It was said that the reason why Jin Tian was chirping was because it was lamenting the suffering of the world. How long would the corpses of those who died from the plague be abandoned? Of course, in the end, the bird that jumped ranks to appeal to the emperor was killed on the spot because it alarmed the emperor. In that case, this bird is just a public knowledge. Besides its annoying mouth, it doesn't have any big harm? Su Shenxing asked puzzledly. That's just the subjective view of human beings. In fact, Shernan is a monster that likes corpses, so it often appears on the battlefield, or accompanied by fierce big monsters. I'm afraid this time, because the Ghost Clan destroyed the village and caused a large number of killings, so this guy came here because of the smell and appeared in this place. The parrot explained. Moreover, its sac also stores black oil full of demon power. It can spit out black flames to cause a huge fire. It is also a kind of fierce monster. But I didn't expect Momotaro to be unexpectedly powerful. Viola Kotaro looked at Momotaro in disbelief as if nothing had happened and continued to roast the glutinous rice balls. She was completely unable to connect his current cheerful appearance with the powerhouse who had just killed the fiendish demon with a single slash. Indeed, even I was shocked. With such a fast sword speed, he can already become a great swordsman guarding a kingdom in the other world. When I didn't have special training, I'm afraid that my sword speed was only like this. Even Su Shinxing was amazed by Momotaro's strength. Speaking of which, what do you do in the other world? Are the people in the other world as powerful as you? She had never heard Su Shinxing mention the other world, and Wu Yejin suddenly felt a little curious. In short, it's a hero who constantly hones his fighting skills and collects holy swords in order to defeat the Demon King. Su Shinxing casually replied. He stroked the hilt of the long sword at his waist. These swords are the holy swords. It is said that there are a total of 12 swords, and each sword has a special power. After all of them are collected, you can combine them into the legendary strongest holy sword, Rollander. It is said that only that sword can really defeat the Demon King. And the reason why Rollander was split up is because the Demon King is afraid that someone will get it. What's with this feeling of a Japanese fantasy RPG game? After listening to the setting of the other world, Wu Yejin couldn't help but ridicule. You should ask this kind of question to the god of creation. Su Shinxing shrugged. Although he had a similar feeling after crossing over at the beginning, after accepting this setting, it was still quite interesting. Then you're in a hurry to go back. Is it because you want to crusade against the Demon King and save the world? Wu Yejin continued to ask. No, that's just on the way. I want to go back because there are still people waiting for me there. The girl found that when he said this, Su Shinxing's face showed a gentle look that she had never seen before. After that, Wu Yejin didn't continue to talk to Su Shinxing. Instead, she used the excuse of going to bed, covered it with leaves, and went to sleep. As for whether the girl fell asleep or not, that's another matter. The parrot also sighed. How youthful! It flew to a nearby tree and took a nap. Su Shinxing jumped to the top of the tree, leaned on the trunk, and looked at the moon in the sky, silent. After a night full of thoughts, the crusade against the Demon Island was finally put on the agenda. In any case, after confirming that Tao Taro would not drag them down, early the next morning, everyone extinguished the bonfire and set off for the Demon Island. Chapter 126. The Island of Demons was a strange island floating on the sea. As the land originally under the jurisdiction of the dragon god, as well as the only place where the human world of Fusang connected to Takamagara, the island naturally contained quite a rich spiritual energy. Perhaps the Ghost Clan also fancied this rich spiritual energy, so they risked angering the gods and migrated there. The first trouble they encountered was that there was no boat to cross the sea. Because ordinary people were very afraid of the ghost race, even if some old fishermen knew the range of the Island of Demons, no one dared to take them there. So they could only think of other countermeasures on the seashore. Speaking of which, I remember that you can fly with this girl, right? Su Shinxing thought for a moment. How long can you fly with that kind of flight? If it's just the little girl alone, it can fly for as long as it takes. The parrot replied without hesitation. Su Shinxing nodded with satisfaction, and then looked at the imposter Momotaro standing on the reef and looking at the sea. It had to be said that when the sea breeze blew the other side's beautiful black ponytail, it was full of elegance and valiance. It was so beautiful that a screenshot could be used as a computer desktop. Unfortunately, it was a boy. Momotaro, what's the fastest you can run? Shaking his head and throwing the strange thought aside, Su Shinxing asked the other side. Do you want to try a race? I've never lost a race, you know? Momotaro tucked his messy sideburns behind his ears, jumped down from the reef with a girlish action, and looked at Su Shinxing with great interest. I didn't mean that. Forget it. Since you said so, let's try a race. Su Shinxing helplessly put his hand on his forehead, feeling that he might never be able to communicate with the other side normally, so he simply did what he wanted. About half an hour later, the race ended with Su Shinxing's victory. He brought back a bunch of lychees from the place where it was said to be the finish line. This made Wu Yejin unable to ask where this guy went. Momotaro naturally couldn't catch up with Su Shinxing. When our protagonist ran back and met him, Momotaro hadn't even run out of Fusang's territory. However, from Su Shinxing's visual estimation, Tao Taro's speed was enough. Actually, if the parrot can fly Wu Yejin, the only problem left is Momotaro. After all, the seawater is not much of an obstacle for me. During the break, Su Shinxing began to explain the reason for his actions. Wu Yejin and the parrot couldn't help but nod when they recalled the effects of Su Shenxing's ice blue longsword, the title's sacred sword. Just now, I took a look and found that Momotaro's speed is still passable. Later, I will use the holy sword to cut a path in the sea according to the direction that those old fishermen pointed out. Then, before the sea closes, Momotaro and I will run to Ghost Island. You don't have to worry, just slowly rush over. Wait, I remember you said before that if you use your sword to split open the sea, something big will happen. Wu Yejin quickly stopped him. For example, a mushroom cloud. Don't worry, I will consciously reduce the power to a certain extent. In any case, even if the distance is not enough to split open the sea, at most, I will add another sword strike. Su Shenxing confidently gave the girl a thumbs up. Dividing line. This was Ghost Island. Most of the ghosts weren't engaged in production, but they could still do things like using huge rocks to build a tall and thick city wall. After all, many ghosts like to compete in strength after getting drunk. Moving the rocks up the city wall was like killing two birds with one stone. For the humans of this era, this city wall was simply like an iron bastion. It could be regarded as an indestructible existence. Akechi was an ordinary ghost on Ghost Island. In terms of classification, it belonged to Akechi, subordinate to Ibaraki Kido. Although in Fusang's legends, there would occasionally appear a relatively friendly ghost, but most of the ghosts were fierce and evil. There were countless examples that could be cited. For example, the food on Ghost Island right now was human jerky that had been cured and dried. Those humans were caught in a village in the forest, and there weren't many young people. This made Akechi somewhat dissatisfied. Compared to the meat of old men and women, it preferred the meat of young human women. That kind of rich taste was completely different from that of men, and it couldn't help but drool. But in the past few days, it had almost finished eating the dried meat, so it carried its big wooden mallet and followed Shitendaji, the king of the ghosts, to leave the city wall made of huge rocks, preparing to cross the sea and go to the human territory to cause trouble. For most of the ghosts, this kind of behavior couldn't be considered a battle at all. Perhaps it was more appropriate to call it hunting or entertainment, because the weak weapons of the humans were simply unable to cause even the slightest bit of damage to them. Only the so-called yin-yang masters in Ping and Jing had some means. According to some of its compatriots who crossed the sea, on the other side of the Fusang Sea, not in the universe, there was a kind of people called qi practitioners who were very powerful. They could hunt their compatriots on the other side until they could only hide in the mountains. They were even called mountain elves. This made Akechi very puzzled. It was understandable that the yin-yang masters could summon demons to help, but how could the small arms and legs of the humans beat the ghosts who could stand on their fists and walk on their arms? After calming down, Akechi pulled its attention back to what it had to do next. I can finally hear the screams of the humans again. This time, even if I secretly eat one or two people, Shitendaji-sama won't blame me, right? When it thought of the tender and delicious taste of the young human women, Akechi had an impulse to give it a try. Unfortunately, the human villages were often not large. At a time, only a dozen or so of its compatriots could go to play together, and the remaining 100 or so could only stay on the island to look after their homes. Just as Akechi turned its head, wanting to show off to its friend and promise to bring back more human meat for it, a sudden change occurred. Something that could not be seen with the naked eye flew past it with a loud rumble. In front of it, the sea was divided into two halves. But what really scared Red Tongue out of his wits was the ghost city behind him, which was much more magnificent and sturdy than any human castle. At that moment, along with all the ghosts inside, they completely disappeared from the world. Behind it, there was only a huge gully that was slowly emitting white smoke. In just the blink of an eye, the largest ghost clan in Fusang was only left with a dozen or so people who just happened to walk out of the ghost city. However, from beginning to end, they didn't even know who did it. Chapter 127. Akatsugu was like a headless fly, circling around the abyss like ravine. The other surviving demons were in a similar situation. Almost all of them distanced themselves from the ravine with lingering fear, looking for the culprit that caused this situation. In addition, there were a few demons that were still alive, but they were affected by the invisible force that destroyed the demon city and suffered heavy injuries. Among them was Shutendaji's proudest subordinate, Ibaraki Dojo. She only had 2 more horns than a human girl, but her right arm was cut off at the elbow, leaving only a small section from her shoulder to her elbow. Ibaraki Dojo's subordinates had already hurriedly helped her to a nearby tree to rest. Who the hell is it? I will definitely make the person who did this suffer a fate worse than death. Shutendaji, the leader of the demon island, was similar to Ibaraki Dojo. His body was similar to that of a human, but he had long horns on his forehead. At this time, his originally handsome appearance was full of bulging veins, making him look ferocious and terrifying. His roar filled with killing intent even made Akatsugu tremble. Is that so? Then I'm sorry to have made you wait. However, someone who wasn't afraid of death appeared. The other party seemed to have jumped out of the ravine. From his appearance, he looked like an ordinary human with a golden sword in his hand. He wasn't a yin-yang master, and he wore completely different clothes from those called samurai. He walked towards Shutendaji with an indifferent expression and then sneered, "But I think it's better not to say things that you can't do. Was it you, human?" Shutendaji's anger was about to explode. This made Akatsugu shrink back involuntarily. After all, Shutendaji was much scarier than usual when he was angry. No matter if it was an ally or an enemy, as long as they appeared in front of him, they would become his target. Even a human village would be completely destroyed in a short period of time. It was this terrifying destructive power that was completely different from his appearance that allowed him to sit firmly in his position as the leader of the demons. "Why are you so angry?" The human swordsman looked at Shutendaji in confusion. "When you were hunting humans, you should have been mentally prepared to be hunted down by humans." Don't tell me that you humans are mentally prepared to be killed by the animals when you kill them." Shutendaji snorted coldly and pulled out a large katana from his back that was as large as a katana. Chi-Shi, who was standing at the side, understood that this action meant prepare for war to the other Ghost Clan members. That's why we humans have to endure the fear of being preyed on and constantly develop. That's how we manage to rise from the bottom to the top of the food chain. The human swordsman glanced at the ghosts surrounding him without any change in his expression. The ocean that had been split open in the distance gradually began to close. A huge amount of seawater collided with each other due to gravity, stirring up huge tsunami-like waves. It was bombarding the Ghost Island and Fusang's mainland, along the ravine that had been split open. A wave of this level was not a disaster for the strong and powerful ghosts. Instead, it was more like a signal to start a war. Almost at the same time, the ghosts surrounding the human swordsman waved their weapons at him. Compared to humans, the ghosts' weapons were considered heavy weapons. These guys with amazing arm strength could even pull up a tree from the ground and wield it vigorously. The mud on the ground was hit by several heavy weapons at the same time, stirring up a thick cloud of dust. The entire island seemed to tremble from this attack. Ordinary creatures would not even be able to resist and would be directly turned into meat paste. This is the result of going against ghosts. Chi-Shi let out a hearty laugh, as if he wanted to embolden himself with this. When the ocean closed, the tsunami-like waves crashed into the island. In the end, the seawater turned into heavy rain and fell from the sky, scattering the smoke and dust in the air. However, there was nothing in the crater that had been blasted open. "Oh!" A voice that made Chi-Shi's hair stand on end came from behind. He hurriedly turned around, only to see one of his compatriots and a giant mace in his hand being cut in half by the human swordsman who had appeared outside their encirclement at some unknown time. Human. Shutendaji's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He roared and rushed towards the other party like a hurricane. But at this time, Ibaraki Doji, who was resting in the distance, shouted at him, "King, the sword in that person's hand can turn him into a golden light." This made Shutendaji calm down. Even Su Shinshin couldn't help but look at the female ghost who looked similar to a human in the distance in a new light. Although he didn't want to expose the power of the sacred sword in this world, she could guess that the light speed he had just seen came from the shining sacred sword, Harakti, in his hand. This eyesight could be considered a genius even in another world. But, so what if I guessed it? Your movements are so slow that it looks like you've stopped. His body turned into a golden light, and after cutting a ghost in half, he raised his golden sword and taunted Shutendaji. Human warrior, if you still call yourself a warrior, then fight me head-on. Shutendaji knew that he couldn't do anything to Su Shinshing with his speed, so he roared unwillingly. Su Shinshing readily agreed. Shutendaji was surprised at first by Seiji's straightforward answer, but then he became ecstatic. He didn't expect this human to be so stupid. As the strongest member of the ghost race, even though he looked about the same size as a human, his arm's strength far surpassed that of other ghosts. He could even topple a mountain. Shutendaji was confident that he could knock away his opponent's weapon with a single blow. Without that strange speed ability, this human was no different from a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. And so he roared and rushed at Seiji. Su Shinshing raised his sword to meet the attack. The two weapons that seemed to be on completely different levels clashed, but the result was unexpected. Shutendaji's katana, which was made by the best ghost craftsman in the world, was directly cut in half by Su Shinshing's golden sword. But this wasn't what surprised Shutendaji the most. He could clearly feel that when their weapons clashed, Seiji's expression was normal, and his weapon didn't tremble in the slightest. Instead, he felt a sharp pain in his hand, and his katana almost flew out of his hand. Damn it, was this also the power of that sword? Chapter 128. With the situation suddenly taking a turn for the worse, Shutendaji felt as if his heart was in his throat. As a warrior who had experienced hundreds of battles, although he had tried his best to dodge backwards, judging from the speed at which this human swordsman had struck out, it would take less than a single breath of time for this human swordsman to pierce through his heart. As long as this human swordsman thrust out his sword, he would die here. But what Shutendaji didn't expect was that the human swordsman didn't chase after him with his sword. Instead, he casually punched him and sent him flying. Although it looked like Shutendaji had rolled on the ground twice, it didn't cause too much damage to the tough Shutendaji. The other demons were probably worried that the human would chase after Shutendaji, so they all roared and attacked him. "Are you insulting me, human?" Shutendaji stabilized himself and roared with an ugly expression. The human swordsman casually flicked away a demon's club and sliced it into pieces. He glanced at Shutendaji with an indifferent expression and said with an uncaring attitude, "No, it's just that I'm not the one who wants to take revenge on you." What Seiji didn't know was that Shutendaji's nonchalant attitude was a stab to the pride of Shutendaji, who had lived a smooth life ever since he was born. But before Shutendaji could charge forward again, his warrior instincts, honed from countless battles, alerted him to danger. He rolled to the side and barely managed to dodge a sudden attack from behind. "You have the smell of Grandpa and Grandma's blood on you." The young man with a waist-length ponytail and a pretty face narrowed his eyes and said coldly to Shutendaji, who was sweating profusely, "You were the one who attacked our village a few days ago, weren't you?" Shutendaji looked at his ribs where blood was seeping out and couldn't help but grumble inwardly. Even though they hadn't fought yet, the human's sharp swordsmanship and the fact that the human swordsman was able to injure him told him that this young man who was as cute as a girl had the ability to kill him. If it was any other time, Shutendaji would probably be more than happy to fight against such a powerful opponent. But now, the timing was really terrible. The human swordsman on the other side was like mowing grass, beating up a large group of ghosts until they pissed their pants. If he did not go over to save the situation, perhaps the remaining few seedlings on Ghost Island would all die. Even if he went over to save the situation, it might not necessarily be useful. What day is it today? Why did these monsters, which completely violated the limits of human beings, keep coming to him? Wait a minute. Shutendaji stared at Momotaro in confusion for a while before a look of realization appeared on his face. This isn't the aura of a human. Rather, it's closer to nature. Are you a natural-born immortal? I don't know about that kind of thing. After Momotaro finished speaking, he began to attack Shutendaji, causing Shutendaji, who only had half a katana in his hand, to be flustered. But even so, The movements of the two were still so fast that it was beyond the limits of human vision. If there were ordinary people present, they would probably only see some afterimages and sparks in the air due to the illusion of human vision. Those were the result of the collision between the two weapons. Yo, need help? While Momotaro and Shutendaji were fighting, Su Shinshing had pretty much cleared out all the ghosts. Apart from Shutendaji, who was unable to fight back against Momotaro's katana, there was only Ibaraki Duji, who had lost an arm under a tree in the distance. No need, Monkey-sen, please watch from the side. Momotaro replied without hesitation. I should have told you not to call me Monkey, Su Shinshing helplessly sighed. After watching the battle for a while, he felt that the situation was great. How could Momotaro lose while riding on the face? And so, he ran over to the tree, intending to get rid of the last remaining ghost. When he got closer, Su Shinshing discovered that the tree was actually a cherry blossom tree. It had been lush with leaves before, but now, for some reason, all the leaves had withered, and pink petals had taken over the branches. It bathed in the monster's blood, so it also transformed into a demon cherry blossom. I'll just cut it down later. Ibaraki Dojo, who had been silently hanging its head under the tree as if it had already died due to excessive blood loss, suddenly erupted and clawed at Su Shinshing the moment Su Shinshing approached and focused all of his attention on the yokai Sakura. Su Shinshing instinctively stabbed her body with his sword. But even so, she still fiercely hugged Su Shinshing, imprisoning him in her arms. Shutendaji, Sama, run away now. Even though blood was gushing out of her mouth, she still shouted at Shutendaji, who seemed to be still fighting. In this kind of situation, it seems like I'm the bad guy. Su Shinshing sighed. He wanted to break free, but found that he couldn't break free from Ibaraki Duji's shackles. Did she use the last of her life to cast a spell to strengthen her body? It seemed that Ibaraki Duji was the only ghost who could use spells. I definitely won't let you continue to harm Shutendaji, Sama. The girl clenched her teeth and insisted on not letting Su Shinshing escape. The Ghost Clan's strong physical fitness and the amplification of the curse actually allowed her to trap Su Shinshing for a short period of time, who couldn't exert force because of his posture. In a way, this was something she should be proud of. In another world, trapping Su Shinshing for 1 minute was something she could brag about with the Demon King's army for a year. Shutendaji's eyes flashed when he saw this situation. He paid the price of being hit by Momotaro's sword and grabbed Momotaro's ankle, smashed him a few times on the ground, and threw him into the sea. This level of attack naturally couldn't kill Momotaro, but it could at least delay him for a while. Good job, Ibaraki Duji. Catch him for me. Not only did Shutendaji not run away as Ibaraki Duji said, he even rushed towards the two of them. With the ghost's physical strength, this distance of several hundred meters was covered in the blink of an eye. The next moment, Shutendaji threw away the broken pieces of the odachi in his hand and pulled out a crimson odachi from his body. Compared to the thick and heavy odachi, this odachi was much smaller. It was about the same size as the odachi that Momotaro's sabersmith Yasutsuna gave him. But in reality, this odachi was Shutendaji's final trump card. Demon Sword, Amikihimur. This was a weapon that only demons could wield. It was said that after her death, Izanami had gathered all the ghostly energy in the kingdom of Yellow Spring to create this unique demon blade in order to take revenge on Izanagi for abandoning her. The demonic energy on the blade alone was enough to compete with ordinary great demons. In Japan's demon world, there was also a legend that if one obtained the Amikihimuru, they would be able to command the Knight of 100 Demons and become the King of 100 Demons. It was similar to the dragon-slaying sword. His previous battle with Su Shinshing ended in a flash, and it was a one-sided beating, so he didn't have time to take out this ultimate weapon, but it was different now. Shutendaji's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. Su Shinshing frowned slightly. Is this guy planning to kill this female ghost who's hugging me as well? Thus, when Parrot brought Wu Yejin to the island, the first thing they saw was Su Shinshing and the female demon in front of him being cut in half by a male demon behind them with a blood-red odachi. Chapter 129. You must be joking. Wu Yejin didn't expect to see such an impactful scene as soon as she arrived here. Don't be in a daze, be careful. The parrot's voice brought her back to reality and she avoided Shitendaji's high jump. She almost followed in Su Shenxing's footsteps and was cut in half at the waist. Just as Shitendaji was about to try and shoot down the parrot, Momotaro finally climbed out of the sea. But it could be seen that his condition wasn't very good. If it's only you, you're not my opponent. After taking out the Amikihimuru, Shitendaji became a lot more fanatical. Looking at Momotaro, he licked his lips and said in a deep voice. Momotaro ignored Shitendaji and took out a glutinous rice ball from a small bag and ate it. Then he frowned. It's soaked in seawater, it doesn't taste good. Are you looking down on me? Immortal brat. Shitendaji felt that he had lost a lot of face and shouted. No, I think the one who's being looked down on is me. At this time, another person's voice came from behind him. That was the voice of Su Shenxing, who should have been killed by him. What? Shitendaji turned around in surprise. He didn't know when, but Su Shenxing was standing not far behind him, unscathed. It was wrong to say that he was unscathed, because the armor on his body did have a crack from being cut in half, but there was no wound on his exposed skin. Behind Su Shenxing was a large pit where Ibaraki Duji's body was cut in half. Even if he was an enemy, Ibaraki Duji's actions were worthy of Su Shenxing's respect. Especially Shitendaji's last attack, she could have avoided it, but Su Shenxing could have dodged it in an instant. In order to ensure that she could injure Su Shenxing, that female demon gambled with her life. Of course, she lost miserably in the end. I knew you wouldn't die so easily. Wu Yejin happily shouted in the sky. Isn't it normal for heroes to revive? Su Shenxing gave her a thumbs up. Don't confuse the game with reality. I was almost scared to death. Viola Five-Leaf grumbled. Su Shenxing shrugged. In fact, his resurrection ability also came from the holy sword on his body. Back then, in order to kill the owner of this holy sword, Su Shenxing had spent a lot of time and effort. Fortunately, in the end, he had figured out the restrictions of this holy sword's resurrection, so Hiro and the others had not been wiped out there. Then, he looked back at Shitendaji, who was drenched in cold sweat, and his expression became slightly more serious. In that case, it's about time for me to take revenge for that slash. The atmosphere sighs. Take a good look at the atmosphere. After being interrupted by Taotaro, Su Shenxing was immediately discouraged. Shitendaji saw an opportunity and once again slashed at Su Shenxing. It seemed that he had already determined that Su Shenxing was the person who posed the greatest threat to him. And from what Shitendaji knew, there were indeed some demons in this world that had the ability to revive, but they were usually in a weakened state after reviving. This human swordsman only spoke after reviving and didn't make a move. It was very suspicious that he was bluffing. Unfortunately, he guessed wrong. The resurrection ability of the Holy Sword was different from that of those monsters. It could resurrect people with full HP. The energetic Su Shenxing kicked him into rolling gourd. It's over. Su Shenxing immediately followed up with a slash, ending Shitendaji's life. Shitendaji's Amikihimurus suddenly flew towards Su Shenxing and expressed its submission, wanting to become his weapon. But Su Shenxing, who hadn't recovered yet, subconsciously used his holy swords, baseballs, to send it flying, causing the legendary demon sword to disappear over the horizon. Oh, it's finally over. The parrot landed on the island with a look of success. You clearly didn't do anything wrong. Wu Yejin complained as she moved her shoulder that was being scratched by the parrot. Su Shenxing thought for a bit and finally threw Shitendaji's corpse under the cherry blossom tree, into the hole where Ibaraki Duji's corpse was buried, and buried it with soil. Then he used the hilt of his sword to knock on the demon sakura tree. Look after their corpses. Don't cause any trouble, or I'll cut you down, do you hear me? The demon sakura tree responded with a rain of cherry blossoms. The rainbow is coming out. At this time, the parrot suddenly shouted excitedly. Su Shenxing turned his head and found that a colorful path had indeed appeared on the island, leading to the sky. Sorry, I won't be going. At this time, Momotaro suddenly said, My journey will end when I reach the Demon Island. Is that so? Take care. Su Xinxing felt that he wasn't good at saying goodbye, so he just said this dryly. I just saw a cave over there where the demon clan hid their treasures. Momotaro, why don't you take some back? Wu Yejin suggested, even if you don't spend it yourself, you can give it to some poor people. That's true, little dog-chan. Thank you. I'll be much happier if you don't call me by that name. While the two were talking, the parrot landed on Wu Yejin's head. Wu Yejin, so heavy. Then it said to Momotaro, actually, you can go to the village on the other side of the Cloud Nation. Our friends are there. Tell them our names, and you should be able to live well in that village. After saying that, the parrot told Momotaro the approximate location of the village where Odaheim was located. Momotaro nodded, indicating that he would definitely go and take a look. So after Momotaro packed his bag, he said goodbye to everyone and left. If my guess is correct, people must have confused Momotaro with Su Xinxing, who pretended to be Susanoo. Therefore, Su Xinxing, who killed Yamada no Orochi, was Susanoo. Momotaro, who lived in the Cloud Nation in the future, reported our names, so he was also mistakenly known as Susanoo. After that, the parrot explained to the two of them why it did this. This can be considered as making up for history to some extent. So, Momotaro will marry that little girl, Odaheim? Su Xinxing touched his chin and began to wonder what the descendants of the two of them would look like. Compared to this, if we don't hurry up and get on the bridge, the rainbow will disappear. The parrot spread its wings and flew onto the rainbow first. After that, Su Xinxing and Wu Yejin also carefully stepped onto the rainbow bridge. What was surprising was that the seemingly unreal rainbow bridge was unexpectedly solid after stepping on it. It felt like tempered glass. As long as they went to Takamagara and got rid of Susanoo, everything would be over. This would be the end of this mythological journey. Chapter 130. Although the rainbow didn't seem to be very high, in fact, after walking halfway, it was almost impossible to see the ground below. There were only large patches of clouds. Coupled with the fact that the rainbow itself was translucent, at first glance, it was still enough to make one's legs go weak. Wu Yejin was a representative of all kinds of people. Absolutely can't let go. The girl grabbed Su Xinxing's arm, her face was pale, and she was trembling like a frightened puppy. Just don't look down. Su Xinxing suggested helplessly, there's nothing to be afraid of. I'm not a monster like you who can be resurrected after being cut in two. I'm just an ordinary person. Hey, did the bridge shake just now? Wu Yejin panicked. You're mistaken. If you really don't dare to go, why don't you let the parrot fly you again? But my shoulder hurts. The girl was in tears. You're really difficult to deal with, that's why I'm different from you. A few days ago, I was just a female high school student. The parrot flew back from the front. Come on, we'll be there soon. Well, it really shook just now. Forget it, you can still fly with me. In the end, the girl compromised. Well, little girl, you really like to be spoiled, the parrot teased happily. This isn't a matter of being spoiled. Wu Yejin muttered in a low voice. At this time, Su Xinxing, who was watching their interaction, suddenly stopped. Be careful, there's someone in front. What? The parrot was startled. It didn't find anyone there when it was investigating just now. As expected of the person who, once, killed me, you're really not an ordinary person. Appearing in front of the Bifrost was a man with a naked upper body. His appearance was quite ukiyo-e style, and Su Xinxing couldn't help but have a desire to ridicule him. Susanoo, why are you here? The most surprised person was the parrot. It immediately realized that something was wrong. Wait, how did you know that His Highness Su Xinxing would? Of course, it's because my dear older sister told me about it across time and space. I didn't believe it at first, but after seeing what you did in the mortal world through the Yada no Kagami mirror, I began to believe it. After all, both Yamada no Orochi and Shutendaji are difficult to deal with even for me. Susanoo sneered. Liar, it's obvious that you can't defeat Yamada, alright? And without your Kusanagi sword, you can't defeat Shutendaji, who has the demonic blade Amiki Himaru. Of course, he couldn't say this out loud. Besides, there were other things worth complaining about. Damn it, Amaterasu Amikami is going to cause a lot of trouble. Even the debate genius was somewhat powerless. It finally found Wu Yejin, a girl who could travel through time and space. Then, the two of them went back to the mythological era to clean up Tensha's mess. But before they could finish, Tensho pooped another pile of sh*t. Is it too late for me to resign now? The debate genius felt helpless in his heart. Although I don't know what's going on, as long as I kill you, I can go back, right? Su Shenxing's hand was already on the hilt of his sword. His expression was normal, and he was even a little happy. Since you've delivered yourself to me, that's great. Didn't I say that I got everything I wanted to know from my stupid older sister in the future? That includes the weakness of you, a visitor from another world. Susanoo sneered. Otherwise, why do you think I dare to stand in front of you? Wu Yejin couldn't help but want to cover her face. As one of the top 3 noble sons of Fuso, was it really okay for him to say such a cowardly thing with a handsome face? But the parrot's expression changed drastically. Oh no! Prince Su Shenxing, hurry up! Before it could finish, Susanoo slammed his Tatsuka sword into the Bifrost Bridge. Suddenly, the Bifrost Bridge shattered like glass, and Su Shenxing, who was caught off guard, fell down with the sound effect of F***ck, 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 F***ck. What's going on? Wu Yejin escaped with the parrot's help, but when she saw Su Shenxing fall into the clouds, she couldn't help but exclaim. The only weakness of that visitor from another world is that he can't fly. The one who answered the girl's question was Susanoo, who was floating in the air. Not good, this is the time to strategically retreat. The parrot immediately folded its wings and wanted to dive. But before it could move, Susanoo grabbed it and dragged it along with Wu Yejin to Takamajihara. Takamajihara was a bit like the heavenly court of Huaxia, but because there was no specific system, it was just a loose group of gods, so it was a lot more leisurely. But now, Takamajihara was different from before. The parrot, who was imprisoned, felt that the divine kingdom was full of a strange atmosphere. What's going on? The situation had already spiraled out of control. Even the parrot was confused. Your Highness Susanoo, what did you do? It's nothing. I just locked up that stupid Oni-sama in Amanoto. This divine kingdom doesn't need 2 rulers. Susanoo didn't hide anything and directly told them what he had done. Impossible. The alternation of day and night in the lower realm is very normal. That's because Sister Tsukuyami submitted to me and used Yada no Kagami to replace the stupid Sister Amaterasu as the sun. Susanoo said proudly, now hand over the heavenly jade lotus. That way I'll spare your lives. So that's how it is. He didn't kill them directly because of the legendary divine artifact, the heavenly jade lotus. Thinking about it, even Susanoo wouldn't dare to provoke the 5 high and mighty Jinchuriki. In this way, the opportunity to obtain the heavenly jewel naturally fell to the few people from the future. But if they handed over the heavenly jade lotus, the situation would probably get out of hand. Aren't you going to hand it over? It doesn't matter. I still have this bit of patience. I'll give you a day. Think about it carefully. Are you going to cooperate or are you courting death? With that said, Susanoo threw the parrot and Wu Yejin into a room filled with looms and closed the door. Wu Yejin carefully pulled the door and realized that it was locked from the outside. What should we do now? She couldn't help but panic. Although the history of the upper realm has been barely corrected, Takamajihara's history is already a mess. Damn it, what should we do now? The parrot, who had always been calm, also became somewhat anxious. At this moment, there was a light knock on the door. Chapter 131. Is it that, Su, families, Shin, fellows? I knew he wouldn't fail so easily. Upon hearing the knock on the door, Wu Yejin immediately thought that Su Shenxing, who had fallen back to the human world, had come over. I'm afraid it's not that simple. The parrot appeared rather calm. Takamajihara isn't physically located above Fuso's human world. If one simply jumps up, even if they can jump out of the atmosphere, they will only enter space and not reach Takamajihara. Otherwise, in your era, Fuso satellites would have long discovered Takamajihara. Why are you always so particular about science in such meaningless places? Wu Yejin couldn't help but grumble in frustration. But then she immediately became vigilant. If the person knocking on the door wasn't Su Xinxing, who could it be? Furthermore, she and the parrot were imprisoned here. The door was completely locked, so there was no way to open the door to see what was going on. After a short while, the door was unlocked with a click. It was obvious that the door had been unlocked. The wooden door was immediately opened, revealing the body of the person outside. It was a girl. She had long hair that was as black as the night, and her eyes were as golden as moonlight. She wore a golden crown, and her chest was adorned with small and exquisite green magatama. She wore a deity's attire that was mainly blue and supplemented by black. Behind her hung a crescent moon. Lady Moonlit Night? The parrot shouted out her name in surprise. Moonlit Night? Could it be the legendary Lady Tsukuyami? Viola immediately thought of the identity of the girl in front of her. However, although she was surprised that the other party was one of the three noble sons, along with Amaterasu God and Susanoo, Wu Yejin became even more vigilant. This was because Susanoo had previously said that Tsukuyami had submitted to him. In other words, the girl in front of her was an enemy. There's no need to be nervous. I have no intention of being hostile to you, the girl suddenly said. However, her tone was a little strange. Is that how Tsukuyami speaks? Wu Yejin whispered to the parrot. Ebisu and Miss Tsukuyami were joking about it, saying it sounded more dignified, but Miss Tsukuyami actually believed it. I remember that this misunderstanding will only be resolved a few hundred years later. The parrot replied in a low voice. Tsukuyami didn't seem to notice that the two of them were whispering. She just continued, I also understand what Susanoo did, but I didn't have the power to stop his atrocities. I could only let him imprison my sister in Ammon. Fortunately, my sister secretly left a few words for me, saying that you are the hope of Takamajihara, therefore I must secretly send you out of Takamajihara. After hearing what the other party said, Jinx finally understood what she was talking about. To put it simply, when Amaterasu was locked up by Susanoo, she had secretly left some instructions for Tsukuyami. Among them, Wu Yejin and Akatsuki were the key to changing everything. She hoped that Tsukuyami could help them when the time came. Perhaps Tsukuyami's submission to Susanoo was only an act. It was to complete the words left behind by Amaterasu. In that case, it was very clear what Tsukuyami wanted to do. She planned on letting Wu Yejin and company out. But it's useless even if we can sneak out now. That fellow will definitely be guarding the Rainbow Bridge. Wu Yejin couldn't help but feel troubled as she said to the parrot, You previously said that the only way to Takamajihara from the ground is through the Rainbow Bridge. With just the two of us, we can't do anything. That's right. There's indeed only one way to go from the human world to Takamajihara through the Rainbow Bridge. However, if you want to go from Takamajihara to the human world, there's more than that. However, the parrot had a look of complete wisdom on its face. Even Tsukuyami seemed to recall something as she revealed a look of enlightenment. Treasure ship? She looked at the parrot and enunciated each word. That's right. As expected of Lady Tsukuyami. You guessed it immediately. The parrot nodded. When the 7 blessings gods were on their pilgrimage, they had once used a magical artifact called the treasure ship. Not only could that thing freely sail on the sea and the sky, but it could also go from Takamajihara to the lower realm at any time or return from the human world to Takamajihara. I know where this item is. Follow me. With that said, Tsukuyami turned around and walked out. Just as Wu Yejin was about to follow, the parrot flew to her shoulder and handed her something with its claws. It was a magic wand used for transformation, the divine artifact that created Fuso's entire human world, the Jade of Heaven. Take this first. The portion of my divine power is lodged in it. Other than you and me, no one else can use this thing. It might be useful later. The parrot fell silent for a moment before apologizing again. Sorry for involving you in such a dangerous matter. Don't you think it's a little too late to apologize now? If you want to apologize, you should have apologized the first time I was killed. The 5 leaves pansy muttered something, but she still took the jewel of heaven and fastened it to her waist with her belt. After choosing a relatively remote and hidden route and walking for a while, Tsukuyomi suddenly stopped. There's someone in front. It's the Heavenly Hand Man. This person has already submitted to Susanoo. Seeing you will definitely be bad. I'll lure this person away. You can take this opportunity to head to the treasure ship. With that said, Tsukuyomi didn't give Wu Yejin and company a chance to object. She walked out of the shadows and successfully attracted the Heavenly Hand Man's attention. The parrot and Wu Yejin had no other choice but to sneak past this area and rely on the parrot's unreliable memory to continue searching for the treasure ship. Thankfully, the parrot didn't have dementia or amnesia. The man and bird still found the magical treasure ship without any danger. However, there was a person who was obviously guarding the treasure ship beside it. It was a beautiful goddess who was playing a lute-like instrument. However, her attire was completely different from Tsukuyomi's. It had a rich foreign color. What kind of god is that? Wu Yejin, who was hiding in the flowers and looking at the goddess from afar, asked. Now, I won't be surprised even if you tell me that she's a heavenly hand woman. No, she's me, the parrot answered calmly. What? The girl was momentarily stunned, unable to understand the parrot's words. But immediately, her eyes widened. Holy *T, that demure, beautiful, and pure goddess filled with an intellectual aura is the genius of the 7 blessings. What happened in the past few thousand years to make such a beautiful woman become a clown like the parrot? Chapter 132. The Heavenly Goddess of Debate was a little upset recently. Amaterasu Amikami had recently closed the door to visitors, and Moonlit Night had also retreated to the second line. She was busy using Yada no Kagami to maintain the alternation between day and night to prevent a disaster from happening in Fuso's human world. For a while, the one who controlled Takamajihara was Susanoo, who had just arrived. Although they were both 3 noble sons, the Heavenly Goddess of Debate did not have a good impression of the domineering Susanoo, especially when he seemed to have some improper thoughts about her. Every time Susanoo looked at her, she always felt as if there were caterpillars crawling on her body. The Weaver girl seemed to have suffered the same harassment. Recently, she had been complaining about this kind of thing. She did not know when Amaterasu Amikami would come out to take control of Takamajihara. And this year's 7 Blessings ceremony had not been held yet. Not to mention that the treasure ship was locked here, Susanoo also forced the 7 Blessings gods to guard the treasure ship here. However, the 7 Blessings gods were not very obedient, so except for the Heavenly Goddess of Debate, the others slipped away because they were bored. She did not know why Susanoo went crazy. After taking control of Takamajihara, he cut off almost all the connections between Takamajihara and Fuso's human world. Even the rainbow bridge that could not be cut off was personally guarded by him. That guy obviously came from the human world, so why was he so hostile to the human world? Suddenly, she stopped plucking the strings in her hand and then looked at the flowers in the distance with some doubts. Just now, she seemed to have noticed a strange aura from there. Was it an illusion? Tilting her head, the goddess sighed, recalled the score of her new work, and then planned to continue playing the zither. But before she could do anything, she felt a heavy blow on her neck, and the goddess' vision turned black, and she lost consciousness. Dividing line. Is this really okay for the original you? After watching the parrot knock out the Heavenly Goddess debating talent with its wings, Viola Corona asked with a complicated expression on her face. It's okay, I have mercy on my wings. The parrot grabbed the Heavenly Goddess of Debate's collar with its small claws and said indifferently, Come and help, let's drag this guy into the treasure ship. Otherwise, it will be exposed if others see it. So, is it really okay to call the previous me this guy? Although she was full of doubts, Wu Yejin still helped in the end. However, the parrot's small arms and legs were of limited help. In the end, Wu Yejin, who was sweating profusely from exhaustion, felt that she had been cheated. It seemed that she had been the one who had dragged the debating goddess into the boat. After entering the ship, The parrot excitedly jumped up and down on the rudder. It seemed as if it wanted to try to steer the ship. However, things were not that simple. Just as the treasure ship was about to set off, Wu Yejin saw Susanoo flying towards them through the window. Did he discover that they had escaped from prison? Wu Yejin's heart pounded wildly. She hurriedly lowered the curtains, afraid that the other party would see her. However, the parrot had also discovered this matter. She pondered for a moment and felt that she couldn't go on like this. There was no doubt that Bada Kaitian was guarding the treasure ship. Once Susanoo came close and found that the treasure ship was not guarded, the fact that they were inside the treasure ship would be immediately exposed. I will lure him away. You wake me up in this era. Tell her what happened and ask her for help. The parrot looked serious. As long as you show her the heavenly jade and let her feel my divine power inside, she will definitely believe you. Then what about you? Wu Yejin couldn't help but ask worriedly. Don't worry, I am a bird. How can I be caught so easily? After saying that, the parrot didn't wait for the girl's persuasion and directly flew out of the treasure ship. After entering Susanoo's field of vision, it immediately pretended to be flustered and flapped its wings to escape in the other direction. Susanoo, who was slowly approaching them, immediately noticed the parrot's movements and chased after it without hesitation. Seeing the parrot and Susanoo disappear from her field of vision, Wu Yejin finally made up her mind. After secretly apologizing in her heart, she slapped the unconscious Bada Kaitian to wake her up. When the Bada Kaian woke up and saw the unfamiliar Wu Yejin, she immediately asked warily, Kuff, who are you? Five-Leaf Jinx quickly summarized what had happened during this period of time with some cuts. Finally, just like the parrot said, she took out the heavenly jade as proof. That's right, the divine power inside is exactly the same as mine. Even if it was an imitation, it would be impossible to create something that is so similar. After sensing the divine power inside the transformation wand, the Bada Kaitan actually believed the parrot. It seems that you are not completely lying. So, what does the future me want me to do for you? Please drive the treasure ship to the human realm. Wu Yejin was overjoyed and quickly said. At this time, a scream came from afar. Wu Yejin turned to look in the direction of the scream. It was the parrot's voice. It seems that me is already dead. After all, Susanoo has targeted us. The Bada Kaitan was very calm. It's not necessarily dead, right? Maybe it was just captured. Wu Yejin hurriedly said. It was unknown whether she was comforting the Bada Kaitian or herself. Unfortunately, that me is indeed dead. Because the divine power left by that me in this heavenly jade has begun to dissipate. The Bada Kaitian waved the wand in her hand. You must be lying. Wu Yejin knelt on the ground in a daze. Although she had never admitted it, the parrot was indeed one of her spiritual pillars after coming to this era. If not for the parrot, she definitely would not have been able to adapt to life here so quickly. Moreover, the parrot always knew the next goal. Even if it did not know, it could set a general direction. Unknowingly, Wu Yejin had become dependent on it. Even when loading a file, the parrot would be reborn with her and retain its memories. This made the girl feel that she was not alone, so no matter what difficulties she encountered, she dared to face them one by one. However, now that Su Shenxing, who could give her a sense of security, was not here, and the parrot was killed, Wu Yejin, who had lost all her spiritual pillars in a day, fell into a state of confusion. What do we do? Do we still need to start the treasure ship? The Bada Kaitian asked. Wu Yejin felt that her mind was in a mess. Without the parrot, she did not know what to do. After waiting for Wu Yejin to think, or rather, to be confused, for a while, the Bada Kaitian showed a bad expression. It seems that it is too late to start the treasure ship now. She pointed outside the cabin. Susanoo is coming again. Wu Yejin wanted to say something, but she could not even make a sound. She lowered her head and found that her hands were trembling slightly. Looking at her useless look, the Bada Kaitan could not help but sigh. Sure enough, it's still too difficult. As she spoke, the goddess waved the magic staff in her hand. To be honest, she was full of intellectual beauty, but it was not the time to care about this. That, I should have expected this possibility, so the divine power left in it, in addition to letting my school check your identity, also contained a message. If you are helpless and the situation is very dangerous, let me use the power of the heavenly jewel to send you back to the original era, and let you find the otherworldly visitor of that era, and ask him to take you to Huaxia. Although Fuso's Takamagara and the human world will collapse because of the historical disorder, it should not affect Huaxia. The Bada Kaitian returned the heavenly jewel to Wu Yejin. I have set it up, and the word to activate is escape. Say this word and you will be able to return to the original world. Wu Yejin stared blankly at the heavenly jewel in her hand. What the parrot said to her at the beginning came to her mind. There were a total of 5 portions of the power of the Tianjin god. 1 portion to bring her to the mythological era, 1 portion to bring her back to her original era, 1 portion to grant her wishes, and 2 portions as insurance, to load the file when she died. Now she had loaded the file twice, and with the cost of coming to this era, it meant that the heavenly jewel still had 2 powers. I won't escape. The girl took a deep breath and looked up. The confusion just now had disappeared, replaced by a look of determination. Although I'm a little sorry, but can I trouble you to let me load the file again? I've seen the records inside. In this way, your wish can't be granted. I remember that the wish is to save a very important person to you, right? Do you think it's worth sacrificing that person's life for an uncertain future? The Bada Kaidian looked at the girl as if she could see through her heart and said slowly, now, even if you escape to the original era, that person will be saved because of your wish. Isn't that better? Because I hate bad ending. Wu Yejin did not avoid the Bada Tsaitian's gaze, but said without hesitation, and even if there is no wish, it doesn't mean that I can't save Sister Concubine. If there is anything to gain from coming to the mythological era, it is probably only one thing. She stood up, pointed the spear-like tip of the heavenly jewel at her chest, and then smiled at the stunned Bada Kain. And that is to never give up. Chapter 133. When Wu Yejin came to her senses again, she realized that it was different from the previous times she woke up in the water. She was now in a room filled with looms. Takamajihara's history is a mess. Damn it, what should I do now? As far as the eye could see, the figure that should have vanished was jumping around on the loom and grumbling. This made the girl feel at ease from the bottom of her heart. Little Miss Five Leaves, why have you been so quiet since just now? Could it be that you were scared by Susan Naruto? The parrot turned its head and asked Five Leaves, who was slumped on the jade-paved ground. Five Leaves wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes before replying. My eloquence is amazing. I just loaded. What? That's not right. I don't have the memory of loading. In other words, it died back then. The parrot was alarmed before it tried its best to calm down and speculate. Wu Yejin nodded and told it everything that had happened after the 2 of them escaped. After the parrot heard this, it flew to the girl's head and pecked her a few times with its beak. You're really an idiot. Since it wasn't easy for me to lure Susanoo away, you should have taken advantage of that opportunity to get me of this era to open the treasure ship and bring you to the human world as soon as possible. As long as you can bring that guest from another world to Takamajihara, everything won't be a problem. But that way, I won't be able to save you. Wu Yejin replied without hesitation, this time, I won't let anyone be killed by Susanoo. The parrot looked at the girl speechlessly for a while before sighing as though it had compromised. The feathers on its tail drooped down. There's really no other way. If that's the case, won't I be forced to choose an even more difficult method? Is there really any other way? Wu Yejin was overjoyed. It's just a guess. In short, according to what you said, Tsukuyami will come and save us now, right? Just as the parrot poured cold water on the girl, there was a light knock on the door outside the textile house. Parting line. After a brief exchange, Tsukuyami left the textile house with the 2 of them. However, unlike the previous time, they didn't head directly to the treasure ship this time. Although Susanoo was domineering, violent, and cruel, he wasn't a fool. He naturally knew about the treasure ship used by the 7 blessings. It was likely that he had deliberately arranged for the man patrolling the path to the treasure ship. After he was sent away by Tsukuyami, he immediately sensed that something was amiss, which was why he came personally to investigate. Since he understood this point, he naturally couldn't follow the other party's train of thought. Therefore, Parrot asked Tsukuyami to bring them to Amanoto, the place where Amaterasu Amikami was imprisoned. Susanu's right, with Tsukuyami's SSS, Tsukuyami's S. Tuz's this with Tsukuyami's SSS, Tsukuyami's. Although Susanoo was indeed a god who was inclined towards combat, Amaterasu and Tsukuyami were two of the three noble sons. Even if they weren't Susanoo's match in terms of strength, they should be able to fight him if they worked together. Just as she had thought, because Susanoo didn't think they would take this path, there were no patrols or guards on the way. The group successfully arrived. However, Amaterasu was still tightly blocked by a boulder, leaving ordinary people at a loss. Amaterasu Yushur is extremely powerful. It originates from my sister and Susanoo. With our strength, we can't open it. Tsukuyami looked at the tightly shut Amaterasu and couldn't help but ask the parrot. We'll need Miss Five Leaf's help. The parrot answered confidently. Five Leaf, who didn't expect her name to pop up, was stunned. Facing the gazes of the god and the parrot, she pointed at her nose. Me? That's right. You should remember the legend of Amaterasu and Amaterasu, right? The parrot nodded. Legend had it that because Susanoo had acted recklessly in Takamagara, Amaterasu was unhappy, so she hid in Amaterasu. And her disappearance caused the sun to disappear from the ground, entering a state of eternal night. In order to prevent the creatures on the ground from being destroyed, the gods of Takamagara gathered outside the cave and asked Amaterasu to dance outside the cave. When Amaterasu heard people singing and dancing outside the cave, it was very lively. Curious, she came out to watch, and was taken out of Amaterasu by the gods who were already prepared. But what does this have to do with me? Wu Yejin asked curiously. Because there is no god called Amaterasu in Takamagara. The parrot replied. And Amaterasu's dance can be said to be the origin of the Kagura dance. Kagura dance? Wait, isn't this the one that Yuhaim taught me? At this point, even Wu Yejin understood the parrot's meaning. I say, don't tell me you've been preparing for this since then? She learned the most primitive Kagura dance from dragon god Yuhaim, so that after coming to Takamagara, she could become the incarnation of Amaterasu and lead Amaterasu out of Amaterasu. Yes, that's right. The parrot nodded. You actually have the cheek to admit it. But the original plan was to get you to use the Kagura dance to bring Amaterasu Amikami out after resolving the problem of Susanoo no Mikoto. The parrot wore a look of vicissitudes. Bird proposes, God disposes, time is like gold. Don't waste it. Tsukuyami, who didn't understand what they were talking about, urged. Therefore, the parrot stuffed Amaterasu Amikami into Wu Yejin's hand. The girl sighed helplessly and transformed into a magical girl. No, at this point, this so-called magical girl was actually the attire of a mythical Amaterasu. Just as Tsukuyami had said, time was precious. Now wasn't the time to be pretentious. Therefore, she made up her mind and danced the Kagura dance she had learned from Yuhaim in front of Amaterasu. After dancing for a while, Tsukuyami frowned. Soon, even the parrot realized that something was amiss. Not good. Her dance will stir up spiritual energy. Now, all the spiritual energy in Takamagara seems to be gathering here. This way, Susanoo no Mikoto will definitely sense it. Should we escape? Tsukuyami asked the parrot. This is your forte. Eloquence. As expected of Lady Tsukuyami. You actually saw through my true form. The parrot smiled bitterly, but she immediately asked seriously, then, how about we gamble with our lives? Instead of escaping and looking for another opportunity in Takamagara like a frightened bird, she might as well take a gamble and see if she could lure Amaterasu out before Susanoo noticed and rushed here. Interesting. I'll take the gamble. The next moment, killing intent rolled over from the south like a boiling dark cloud. Susanoo had already discovered the abnormality here. Chapter 134. As the Lord of Takamagahara. If Amaterasu resisted from the bottom of her heart, even Susanoo wouldn't be able to imprison her in Amanoto. However, because Amaterasu seemed to have a brother complex and Susanoo's unexpected actions, Amaterasu was imprisoned in that place. If she wanted to, she could actually open the boulder that represented the seal a little. However, she couldn't come out with her own strength. This was why she needed Tsukuyomi to pull her out from outside. However, when Tsukuyomi and Parrot could see Susanoo's gloomy face, Amaterasu had no intention of coming out. From the looks of it, we lost the bet, Your Excellency Tsukuyomi, Parrot said helplessly. Thou, take that child and escape. Due to the urgency of the situation, even Tsukuyomi didn't need to use such a strange tone. She took out the Yata no Kagami from her sleeve and took off the Yasakani jade from her snow-white neck. I'll block him. As he spoke, Susanoo had already descended from the cloud. He frowned. His face, which didn't have many eyebrows to begin with, looked even more ferocious. You actually dared to collude with these fellows to do such a thing. You really disappoint me, Sister Tsukuyomi. Compared to the way he dared to talk and laugh with Su Shinshing on the Rainbow Bridge, Susanoo's mood was much worse. Clearly, he didn't expect Tsukuyomi to betray him. Before that, thou should reflect on thy actions. Tsukuyomi fearlessly went tit for tat with him. My sister allowed thee to settle in Takamejihara because she believed that thou cared for Mother of the Netherworld Kingdom. However, not only did thou not appreciate Amaterasu's kindness, but thou also repaid kindness with enmity. Are these your last words? Susanoo, who had been poked in his sore spot, sneered. A violent gust of wind swept up in the originally windless Takamejihara. His body flew higher and higher with the hurricane as he looked down at the group. That girl who is dancing is holding the heavenly jewel, right? As long as I obtain that, no one in this world will be my match. Stop dreaming. Su Jun from another world can defeat a traitor like you with one hand. The parrot roared. She wasn't trying to show off, she just wanted to see if she could use words to stall for time. Don't tell me you think you can kill him by falling from the Bifrost. Of course not. To be honest, I'm very curious about how strong that variable from the future is. If possible, I'd like to exchange blows with him, but just to be on the safe side, I don't plan on fighting him head-on. As long as I get the Celestial Jade Stalk, I'll be able to get rid of that guy once and for all. Susanoo didn't get angry at the parrot's words, he just continued to speak with a sneer. Once and for all? Don't tell me. A look of disbelief appeared on the parrot's face, although it was not obvious from the bird's face. According to the myths, the heavenly jade was the artifact that created Fusang Island. What would happen if it was reversed? Fusang's human world would probably collapse because of this. That's right. I can't kill him. It's said that our curses and divine spells are useless against him. In that case, we might as well destroy the entire human world. That way, no matter how strong he is, he won't be able to return to Takamegara. Susanoo explained his plan without any guilt, causing Tsukuyomi and the parrot's hearts to turn cold. At the same time, they were completely certain of one thing. This fellow had gone crazy. I can't pretend that I didn't hear that. At this moment, a cold female voice sounded from behind everyone. Atenshu-sama. Sister. The parrot and Tsukuyomi turned their heads in surprise. Then they saw a snow-white husky. Well, from the color of its fur, it should be a Samoyed. The huge white dog had red patterns on its forehead and body. There was also a cloud-like mane on its tail and knee joints. After it appeared, the Yata no Kagami in Tsukuyomi's hand broke free from the goddess's hand and flew to the white dog's back 3 inches away. Then, it burned like the sun, making people feel as though the white dog was carrying the sun. It's fine. In order to get out of Tendo Rock, I can only take this form. However, there's a problem. I can't change back for the time being. The white dog said indifferently. Tensho, aren't you completely unable to escape my curse? Susanoo couldn't help but laugh out loud. Or do you think a dog can rule the entire Takamegara? Susanoo, if you admit your mistake now, I can still forgive you, Tensho said angrily in a deep voice. You're still the same as before. You think you're high and mighty. I've long had enough. Why is it that as the three noble sons, you can lord over the heavens and be carefree and happy, while I have to fight those demons in the human world alone? Why can you order the human world around while I can only let it be? Now that things have come to this, I can't go back and I don't want to go back. Susanoo said coldly. Admit your mistake? On the other hand, if you submit to me now, I can still spare your life. Is that what you've always thought? Tenshu's voice was pained, but even so, she didn't continue to let Susanoo do whatever he wanted. Even if it's for your sake. This time I must stop you. Susanoo wasn't the only one who heard the voice from the future. Tensho also heard the pain and self-blame in her heart. That was why she didn't hesitate to take this form and cooperate with Wu Yejin's power to get out of Tendo Rock to stop her only brother. For me? Don't say such nice words. Do you think I'll change my mind just because of a few words? With a ferocious look on his face, Susanoo waved his hand, and the surrounding area was instantly surrounded by layers of clouds, revealing the various gods who had pledged their allegiance to Susanoo. Parrot wasn't the only one who was stalling for time by chatting. Susanoo also used this time to have his subordinates surround everyone. They couldn't escape even if they had wings. Prepare to die. Susanoo sighed with a complicated expression, then pulled out his Tatsuka sword. Right at this moment, a commotion broke out among the gods surrounding the group of gods. What happened? Tsukuyami asked nervously in a low voice. Parrot thought for a moment, then asked Wu Yejin, who was panting, "Who helped you load?" The debating goddess of this era. Wu Yejin asked in confusion. Parrot's eyes lit up. I see. Every time Wea loaded a file, Parrot's memory would also follow her. But this time, because Parrot died before the last time, it didn't inherit the memory of the previous week. So, other than Wuye, who inherited the memory of the previous week. It was obvious that it was the debating goddess of this era. The noise of the gods became louder and louder, and even Susanoo noticed that something was wrong. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the sound. In the next moment, a huge treasure ship broke through the air and hit the ground. The treasure ship's golden bow immediately caved in, and the ground was also hit with a big pit. Stone chips splashed everywhere. What? Susanoo's face showed a look of surprise. Only Parrot could roughly guess what had happened. Since the debating goddess of this era had the memory of the previous week, she would naturally take advantage of the moment when Susanoo was attracted by the commotion here to directly drive the treasure ship to the human world. And now that the treasure ship appeared here, it meant that, sorry, I'm not late, right? A figure staggered out of the treasure ship. He held the debating goddess in one hand, who had lost consciousness due to the impact, and scratched the back of his head with the other hand. He asked Wei and the others listlessly. Su Xinxing, participating in the battle. But now he wasn't wearing the armor that was destroyed by Shitendaji. Instead, he was wearing a very simple jinbun. No one knew where he got it from. He put the unconscious debating goddess next to Tsukuyami and the others, and then gave Wu Yejin a thumbs up. I heard about it. Well done. The girl lowered her head with a slightly red face. There was an indescribable feeling in her heart. Unlike Wu Yejin and the others who were pleasantly surprised, Susanoo's face immediately became ugly. But immediately, as if he had made up his mind, he raised the sword of Tatsuka in his hand and pointed it at Su Xinxing. Listen to my order, gods of Takamagara, kill that guy for me. Suddenly, Heavenly Hand Man, Jinyu Raikami, Shenji Suri Shinobi 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 Suri Shinobi, huh? How dare you point at me like that? Su Xinxing sneered at Susanoo's appearance. Facing the many gods rushing towards him, he slowly drew his sword. Sukuin, please don't kill too many gods. Most of the people here have been bewitched by that guy. Parrot hurriedly shouted. And if too many gods died, the priesthood would be in chaos, which would be a great danger to the human world. Su Shenxing was taken aback, then he clicked his tongue and complained. So troublesome. With that, he put the shining sacred sword back into the scabbard and waved the scabbard violently. Everyone felt something flash in front of them. Then, the gods who dared to rush towards Su Shenxing fell from the sky like heavy rain. Judging from the way they rolled their eyes and foamed at the mouth, it was estimated that they wouldn't wake up in a short time. After that, Su Shenxing inserted the scabbard into the deck with a clang. Then he pulled out the sword from the scabbard and appeared in front of Susanoo in a flash. I am Sanguiko. If you kill me, the operation of Fuso's human world will definitely be affected. He didn't expect that Su Shenxing would be so unreasonable after being played by him. Even Susanoo was scared. At this time, he didn't have the thought of fighting with Su Shenxing, so he could only try to beg for mercy. But before he could finish, Su Shenxing waved the shining sacred sword, and Susanoo's upper body disappeared, leaving only the lower part of his body standing there. When Amaterasu saw this scene, he fainted directly. At this time, Su Shenxing slowly said to Susanoo, who only had half a corpse left. It's none of my business. The dividing line. You even prepared the Kusanagi sword, you really planned everything from the beginning. After solving all the problems, Su Shenxing naturally planned to return to the original world. The parrot also tactfully asked Tsukuyomi to prepare the Yada no Kagami and the Yasakani no Jade, and also took out the Kusanagi sword that he obtained from the body of Yamada no Orochi. Wu Yejin saw that the parrot was so well prepared and couldn't help but complain. Well, although I did prepare a little, most of the situations were caused by you, I was just a participant. The parrot replied with a dry laugh. In that case, let's say goodbye here. Seeing the door to the other world open, Su Shenxing planned to leave. That. Wu Yejin pulled the corner of his clothes. What's wrong? Su Shenxing turned his head and said, if you have something to say, it's better to say it quickly. The guys here don't seem to welcome me. That's because you defeated 3/4 of the people here with a single move, okay? Wu Yejin didn't know why she stopped Su Shenxing. After holding it in for a while, she suddenly smiled in relief and released her grip on the corner of his clothes. It's nothing. Anyway, thank you so much. See you in the future. If there's a chance, puppy, Su Shenxing grinned at her, revealing a rare smile. Don't call me puppy. And there will definitely be a chance. Wu Yejin said confidently. Su Shenxing didn't argue. He only waved his hand at her and jumped into the tunnel that led to the other world. He doesn't have any nostalgia at all. Wu Yejin muttered in disappointment. Why are you in a daze? We have to go back too. The parrot patted Wu Yejin on the shoulder. Yes. Wu Yejin pulled herself together and bade farewell to Tsukuyomi and the others. She prepared to return to the future under everyone's watch. When I return to that era, I'll ask Su Shenxing of that era to save Sister Fei Gong. The moment she passed through the space-time tunnel, the girl had this thought. Chapter 135. I suspect that my father has been switched. 9,000 meters above the Pacific Ocean, a commercial plane painted with the Himiya family's logo was flying from Fuso to America at a speed of 600 kilometers per hour. In the cabin, a young girl with a serious expression said to a burly man wearing an embroidered feather coat sitting opposite her. Minamoto Masanori, who was sent to be the girl's guard not long after his body recovered, was stunned when he heard such ridiculous words. I'm sorry, Miss Himiya, I don't understand what you mean. He seemed to have a headache as he used his index finger to knock on his own forehead. However, from the sound of knocking, it seemed like he used quite a lot of strength. You mean, the head of the Imperial Concubine's Palace in White Bell Village, is not you? Mizuki Takemiya nodded. I hope that I can get the help of your Yin Yang Liao. That's ridiculous. Miss Himiya, it's summer now. April Fool's Day has passed a long time ago. Please don't make such a joke. Minamoto Masanori saw the girl's serious look and couldn't help but sneer. Do you know how strong your father's security is? Ordinary people don't even have a chance to look at him. Not only that, He also applied for several first-class Yin-Yang Liao masters to be his bodyguards to prevent himself from being cursed. Obviously, your father knows how many people he has offended in the past. Minamoto Masanori leaned back, letting most of his body sink into the soft leather sofa. If someone really switched your father, let's not talk about the ordinary people in the security group. At least our people will be able to find some clues. But when my father went to Kumamoto County for an inspection, he was indeed assassinated by an unknown person. Although it was said that he was unharmed and only lost a substitute for my father, ever since then, my father's behavior has changed. Since the Himiya family's businesses were all over Fuso, as the head of the Himiya family, her father naturally had to go to various places for inspection. Mizuki Takemiya tapped a few times on his white notebook and pulled up several statistics. The funds of our Himiya family's businesses have begun to flow out in various ways. In just half a month, more than 1/5 of our businesses have become empty shells. This is no longer an ordinary capital operation, but a purposeful emptying of our Himiya family. I don't understand this kind of thing, but please forgive my rudeness, Miss Feigong. Your father is a tyrant. Once he makes a decision, no one can change his mind no matter how many people there are. In the past few years, your father used a lot of nonsense to revitalize the Feigong family. Although some of it went down the drain, from the current situation of the Feigong family, many of his decisions were correct, which further strengthened his prestige. Now that the global economy is a bit sluggish, you should know that your family's business has shrunk quite a bit, so in my opinion, he's just planning to repeat what he did in the past few years. Speaking of this, he seemed to be thirsty. He took out a bottle of drink that came with the plane, took a big gulp, wiped his mouth, and continued, "At the same time, you should also know how cautious your father is about his own safety, right? During every inspection, it was almost always his stand-in at the front, while he himself hid behind the bodyguards and Yin-Yang masters. That's why the stand-in died when he was assassinated, because the bodyguards and Yin-Yang masters were mainly protecting him, not the stand-in. But if I remember correctly, our family invested a lot of money to build a new internet center in Kumamoto County, and almost all of our online products are born from there. Like you said, my father occasionally becomes more stubborn, especially when he sees a technical product that he likes. At that time, even if it's just an inspection, he will personally show up. In his words, only by talking to the product in person can he determine the function and effect of the technology and product, and position it in the market. At this point, the girl wisely stopped. Obviously, she meant that the stand-in that was killed was likely the real head of the Himiya family. But these are only your guesses. We can't come to this conclusion based on guesses alone. Minamoto Shinjing was still unwilling to believe it, and his large head kept shaking. Unless you have conclusive evidence, I won't believe it. I don't have conclusive evidence, but there are still a lot of suspicious points, such as. The girl hesitated for a moment, but continued. For example, my father is a bit indecent when it comes to women. But after the assassination, he never slept with any of his mistresses again. That's a very convincing point, isn't it? Minamoto Shinjing shrugged and said sarcastically. The girl seemed to want to say something, but at this time, an old man who looked like a butler came out of the cabin at the back of the plane, quietly bypassed Minamoto Shinjing, and then leaned close to the girl's ear and whispered a few words. Mizuki Takemiya's face suddenly became extremely ugly. But she quickly tried to calm her face, then stood up and said to Minamoto Shinjing, who had a meaningful smile, "Since your Yin-Yang Liao is unwilling to help, then forget it, I will find other help." After saying that, she asked the butler to take care of Minamoto Shinjing, and walked stiffly to the cabin at the back of the plane. However, before she could reach the door, the butler screamed and fell to the ground. His chest was cut open, and she could even see his heart that had not completely stopped beating. The initiator of all this was holding a light green tachi and looking at Mizuki Takemiya with a smile, causing the girl's heart to beat wildly. After she discovered that the consortium's funds were flowing out, she naturally hid it from her father or the person who pretended to be her father and sent a lot of people to secretly investigate the whereabouts of the funds. Just now, someone finally caught the tail of the funds and found that almost all the funds had flowed into the same account. And the creator of that account was Minamoto Shinjing. This made the girl almost faint. She had actually been asking the mastermind to help track him down. I have to say, our people's standards in doing this kind of thing still need to be improved. Minamoto Shinjing sighed. I can't believe a little girl like you saw through it. Mizuki Takemiya tried hard not to look at the butler's corpse. She desperately summoned the little courage she had and looked at Minamoto Shinjing. Why did you do this? Is it the Yin Yang Liao's intention? Yin Yang Liao? Humph. I'm not interested in working for Tsuchimikado. Minamoto Shinjing's face was full of disdain. Sorry, I'm not interested in talking too much to the dead. With that, Minamoto Shinjing waved his hand and the entire commercial plane was cut in half. The unprepared girl screamed as she was swept out of the cabin by the strong wind. Soon she disappeared into the vast sea. A pair of black wings spread out behind Minamoto Shinjing. After looking at the falling plane with a sneer, he flapped his wings and flew in the direction of Japan. Chapter 136. So, Su Shinshing stood in front of the shrine, looked at the girl in front of him, and said solemnly, because I've finished my work in Fuso, and it's almost time to go back. But how can you leave at a time like this? Hanakyu and Yuyuan stared at Su Shinshing with a different gaze, obviously not wanting him to leave like this. In a place like a corridor behind the shrine, Emoli was expressionlessly eating a mayonnaise-flavored scallop while looking at the two. Chihaya has been promoted to a god, and the monster in the dry well is finished. I have no reason to stay here anymore. Su Shinshing turned around, leaving only his back to the girl. But I still have a lot of things to tell you. The girl hesitated for a moment, then raised her head, as if she had made up her mind about something. No need to say anything. Su Shinshing smiled valiantly. I know you don't want me to leave, but Fuso is not my hometown after all. Don't want you to leave. You destroyed 5 national treasures and you still want to run. Hanakyu and Yuyuan took a few steps back, then ran up and kicked Su Shinshing's lower abdomen. Then she knelt on the ground, holding her foot and moaning. This guy's abdominal muscles are actually harder than iron. Be reasonable, I've already helped you guys stick them with cement. Su Shinshing, who was completely unaffected by the girl's attack, said with his eyes wandering. How are they glued? They've completely turned into a so-called postmodern sculpture, okay? The Iron Throne. Who would want the Iron Throne that is more than 90% made of cement? Let me tell you, I'm not boasting, but if I really want to compensate for those things, Su Shinshing puffed out his chest and said with a proud face, I don't have money. I'm not boasting. While Hanakyu Yuyuan and Su Shinshing were having a friendly interaction, Asahi Sakurakanji suddenly walked over from Tori and said, Goddess-sama, someone is coming up the mountain path. You'd better avoid them. Isn't that Chihaya's girl? It's not Chihaya-sama. Lord Chihaya said that he has to deal with the student council today, so he'll be a little late. Asahi shook his head. It's the student council president of Huanghua. Oh, is that the guy that Chihaya has been talking about? The guy who skipped work for a few days? Because Shinshan Qian had been talking about the president who had been on sick leave for several days during lunch break, even Su Shinshing had heard about him. Yeah, but I don't know why, but she's wearing casual clothes now, Asahi said with a puzzled look on his face. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. Su Shinshing stretched lazily and then slipped into the shrine. He also took Jasmine, who was nibbling on the shellfish obediently like a hamster, into the shrine. Then I'll be going first. Knowing that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of Su Shinshing today, Hanakyu Yuyuan gave up. After saying goodbye to Asahi, she disappeared as if she was wearing an invisibility cloak. Although Asahi Sakurakanji knew that it was the power of a curse that only distorted light to achieve the effect of invisibility and could only deceive ordinary people, he was still envious of her. After a while, Wu Yejin arrived at the Shiranui shrine, breathing heavily. Wu Yejin, senpai, are you here to pay your respects? Asahi Sakurakanji immediately greeted her and asked. If I remember correctly, you're called? Asahi Sakura Kanji, right? Wu Yejin glanced at Sakura Kanji and immediately matched him with the name on the student list. Yes, is there anything I can help you with? Asahi Sakura Kanji couldn't help but feel a little nervous. It's actually not a big deal. Wu Yejin hesitated for a moment, but finally gritted her teeth and asked, although it's a little rude, but do you know a guy called Su Shinshing? Asahi Sakura Kanji's first thought was, oh no! Lord God has been exposed. However, before she could cause a commotion, Wu Yejin immediately added and comforted Asahi, don't be afraid, he's an old friend of mine. I'm just here to ask him for help. A friend from the mythological era. It shouldn't be a problem to call him an old friend, right? Wu Yejin thought to herself. An old friend? Sakura Kanji had never heard Su Shinshing mention this before, so she was completely confused. However, after thinking about it for a moment, she decided to trust him. Even if he had any ill intentions, Lord God could easily deal with him. Thus, she brought Wu Yejin to the inner room of the shrine. The inner door of the shrine was a very traditional paper door. When Sakura Kanji opened the door to the inner room, she found Su Shinshing hugging Emoli and sleeping soundly, while Emoli, who was being used as a bolster, was innocently munching on a shiitake. Although she had gotten used to the intimacy between Su Shinshing and Emoli, Sakura Kanji still felt a little shy and awkward when she saw her. Then, she vaguely heard the girl behind her muttering in a broken tone. No wonder, not interested lost. Because she felt that Wu Yejin seemed to have fallen into a very sad and bleak state, Asahi didn't dare to disturb her. She just ran to Su Shinshing and shook him awake. What's wrong? Is school over? I feel like I just fell asleep. Su Shinshing asked sleepily. No, you really just fell asleep. Asahi helplessly leaned over to Su Shinshing's ear and told him about Wu Yejin's visit. Thus, Su Shinshing's eyes fell on Wu Yejin. Yo, I vaguely guessed it was you 2 days ago at the hospital. How have you been these years, Dogson? Although everything happened last night to Wu Yejin, Su Shinshing had already spent nearly 5 years. He had even lost a lot of hair. Su Shinshing felt a little emotional when he suddenly felt like a friend from the past. Don't call me Dogson. Well, it's okay. Wu Yejin subconsciously replied, but immediately reacted, no, Sukuin, I need your help. Okay, Su Shinshing bared his teeth and said, are you going to hack Tensho or Tsukuyami this time? For the first time, Wu Yejin had the feeling of, is it really okay to ask this guy for help? She rubbed her face and continued, well, my best friend is in danger. Can you help me save her? Best friend? Su Shinshing suddenly came to a realization and hammered his palm. Oh, right, you are a lesbian. Asahi quietly took a step back and distanced himself from Wu Yejin. Wu Yejin subconsciously wanted to refute, but on second thought, it didn't seem wrong, so she nodded straightforwardly. Since it's an old friend who asked, I have to help. Where is she now? Su Shinshing said straightforwardly. Lord God, don't tell me you want to use this opportunity to escape from Miss Hanaquin's debt collection? Asahi had a suspicious look on his face. You're overthinking it, see? Haven't you heard of the saying, friendship is magic? No, Asahi answered firmly. After the interaction between the two came to an end, Wu Yejin said that she didn't know where Mizuki Takemiya was. However, she had some of Mizuki Takemiya's personal belongings on her, and there was his, fresh, scent on them. Can I ask why there are women's underwear with blue and white stripes in this pile of personal belongings? Su Shinshing's mouth twitched. Spoils of war. Wu Yejin turned her face away. Why is the 100,000 Concubines Sister Fan Club having a quiz contest? Just how free were the students in this school? However, with this pile of Mizuki Takemiya's fresh, personal belongings, he could use the tracking talisman and Emoli to determine the general location of Mizuki Takemiya. The rest was to go there. After splitting the world according to the coordinates pointed out by Emoli, Su Shinshing passed through the world crack and found himself on an uninhabited tropical island. The lush vegetation and the hot and humid climate told the story without reservation. All that's left is to find that girl called Mizuki Takemiya. She should be nearby. Once we find Emoli, help me locate the Shiranui shrine, and we'll go straight back. Also, don't run around here. If you get lost, I'll have a headache. Ichim Memoli? Noticing that there was no response, Su Shinshing turned around and found that there was only an empty beach behind him. Damn, Emoli didn't come with us? Shiranui Shrine. Miss Emoli, aren't you coming with us? Asahi looked at the slowly closing space crack and asked Emoli, who had finished eating and was drinking green tea. Wu Yejin also had the same confused expression as Asahi Sakurakanji. I don't like the hot weather. It's okay, the landlord will take care of it. She put down her teacup and tilted her head, probably. Chapter 137. The Yin-Yang Liao in Japan was influenced by Huaxia's seclusion from the world. Therefore, just like the sects in Huaxia, they tended to be conservative. Of course, this had something to do with the fact that 80 years ago, Yin-Yang Liao was instigated by the national fanaticism and was beaten to a pulp by the secluded forces in Huaxia. Unfortunately, most secluded sects had a rule of not interfering with the change of political power in the secular world. They only guarded their own territory. Otherwise, the atomic bomb wouldn't have existed. Today, however, a blond Caucasian man appeared in the reception room of Yin-Yang Liao. If he was a member of the inner world in Europe, his identity would definitely be recognized by the coat of arms on his chest. It was the coat of arms of the Livonian Knights. The secular world generally believed that the Livonian Knights were a branch of the Teutonic Knights, one of the three major European knight orders, after absorbing the remaining members of the Sword Saint Knights. But in reality, the Sword Saint Knights were the main body of this reorganized knight order. After the 14th century, the Livonian Knights began to fade from the public eye. This was because they began to live in seclusion. They inherited the legacy of the poor knights of the Temple of Christ and Solomon, also known as the Templars, which disappeared in the 12th century. They became the main force of Europe against the supernatural creatures in the inner world. Hello, Knight James. Tsuchimikado Motoki, who arrived late, greeted the Caucasian man sitting on the sofa. Would you like some wine? My friend brought it back from Burgundy. The quality is pretty good. No need, Mr. Tsuchimikado. The Caucasian man replied stiffly in awkward Japanese. I still have work to do. I can't stay here for too long. Oh, that's a pity. Tsuchimikado Motoki didn't seem to feel sorry at all. He just said perfunctorily. If it was a grand knight from the Livonian Knights, he might have been more enthusiastic. But this guy was neither a grand knight nor an important figure in the Livonian Knights. He came to Yin-Yang Liao without even making an appointment. How rude. If it weren't for the fact that the Livonian Knights and the Vatican wore the same pants, Yin-Yang Liao would have lost his temper long ago. Then I'll get straight to the point. I wonder if Mr. Tsuchimikado has heard of the Illuminati? James didn't know if he didn't notice Tsuchimikado Motoki's expression, or if he didn't care, but he told Tsuchimikado the purpose of his visit. After listening for a while, the originally careless Yumiman's expression became more and more serious, but his face also gradually became serious. It turned out that the Vatican had recently made an unexpected discovery during a routine investigation. There was a secret organization that was plundering the wealth of the surface world by unscrupulous means. It just so happened that those fellows were rather high-profile in their actions. Once they were discovered by ordinary people, they would immediately kill them to silence them. They did not have the sense of secrecy that ordinary people of the inner world would have. But as the investigation deepened, something even more chilling happened. The organization called the Illuminati seemed to have spies and moles in many national and private supernatural organizations. This made the Vatican deeply uneasy, and at the same time, they gave up on the idea of fighting alone and decided to join forces with other forces to solve the problem. The religious conference was held for this. Because the representative of your country left too early, and the others didn't keep it a secret. Maybe there are spies from the Illuminati in your country, so His Majesty the Pope didn't tell them the truth. I can only express my sincere apologies on behalf of myself. James stood up, put his left hand on his right chest, and bowed slightly. That's it. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave. After sending James away, Tsuchimikado Motoki's face, which had a formal smile, suddenly turned cold. After a moment of silence, he picked up the internal phone on the table and called his assistant. Get someone to sort out the recent financial situation of the major consortia in Japan. Give me all the abnormal ones. Sir Head. The Illuminati. Interesting. Let me see how capable you are. Putting down the phone, Tsuchimikado Motoki sneered and walked out of the brightly lit reception room. Parting line. Su Shinshin was facing one of the few huge tests in his life. Why is there an icy lobster here? He lay on the shore and looked at the clear water. He was confused. Because he was allergic to seafood, he shouldn't be able to eat it. But the problem was, it was a fresh ISE lobster. And it was such a big one. Thinking about the price of this guy in the seafood store, if he missed this chance, he wouldn't be able to eat it anymore. Damn it. Saving people is more important. In the end, Su Shinshin could only endure the pain and leave with tears flowing down his face. Although he was confident in Mo Li's magic and Qin Xingyan's tracking talisman, he didn't see the person Wu Yejin was looking for after coming to the island. Not good. If I can't do what I promised, it's too much of a failure. If only my perception was stronger. Su Shinshin anxiously spent 10 seconds running around the uninhabited island, which was not much smaller than a normal town, but he still couldn't find the person. Just when our protagonist was at his wit's end, he faintly heard something falling from the sky. So he looked up and saw half of the planes and Mizuki Takemiya, who had fainted from fright. He didn't expect the situation to be so bad. If Emoli was here, it would be fine. After all, that girl could fly. But Su Shinshin wasn't good at catching people in this situation. Logically speaking, if he stood on the ground and caught the person, the impact was no different from falling directly to the ground. And if he jumped up to catch the person, the damage was equivalent to being hit by a piece of iron with the speed of his falling and Su Shinshin's jumping speed. To be honest, Su Shinshin didn't want to recall the scene he had experienced before, because it was quite troublesome to wash clothes. There was only one way to safely catch the other party, and that was to jump to the point where he could touch the other party and begin to fall. After ensuring that he caught the other party, he would use the method of stepping on the air to slow down until the falling force would not cause any harm to the human body. It's time to show my real skills. Su Shinshin patted his face and whispered as if to encourage himself. Then, he looked at the girl who was falling rapidly from the sky and jumped with all his might. Chapter 138. He had failed. Su Shinshin felt a headache coming on. Of course, even though he had failed, it was not to the extent that the other party's classifier had turned into a pile or a few lumps. It should be said that it had been quite smooth at the beginning. He had used just the right amount of strength to catch the other party without hurting her. It was just that when he used the cloud ladder, physical, to slow down the landing, his hands slipped and the other party's head hit the ground first. Now, as long as he touched the other party's head, he could clearly feel that there was a swollen bump. All in all, let's just pretend it never happened. Su Shinshin, who was covered in cold sweat, decided to bury this matter in his stomach. But then again, why do I feel like I've seen this girl somewhere before? He touched his chin, but could not remember when he had met the girl. Forget it, the mission is done. Since Mo Li did not come with him, Su Shinshin could not directly return to the Shiranui shrine. But that did not mean that he had no other way. Sakura Apartments had special protection. As long as it was in this world, Su Shinshin could confirm its location. Next, he just had to use teleportation, physical, to bring the girl to Sakura Apartments first, then let Su Feng pay for it and take a plane to Japan. Even if he took the time to go to the airport and take the tram, it would take at most 7 hours to return to the Shiranui shrine. And on the way back to Sakura Apartments, he could also find Qin Xingyan to replenish some talismans, and use the Holy Spirit medicine to help the girl who had a bump on her head reduce the swelling. But when Su Shinshin took out the Holy Sword Rolander again, the space around him creaked as if it could not bear the weight. It sounded like the sound of plastic being rubbed against foam or metal being bent. The surrounding scene was distorted as if it was reflected in a mirror. TSK, I've been using teleportation, physical, too much recently. The stability of the world's space has reached its limit. Su Shenxing had encountered this situation before, so he naturally knew what was going on. In this situation, if he continued to use teleportation, physical, it would be easy for him to fall into another world. Because he did not want to complicate matters, in the end, he sighed and waved his hand to make Roland Durr disappear. As a result, the space returned to its original state. Since teleportation, physical, didn't work, he could only use the long-sealed high-speed rail of ordinary people. The girl was not heavy. Even if he carried the girl on his back, Su Shenxing was confident that he could run on the water. As long as he was careful not to exceed the second cosmic speed, he would not be afraid of rushing out of the Earth's orbit. Furthermore, the girl was still unconscious. This was simply a heaven-sent opportunity. It should be noted that most of the people who had taken the high-speed rail in a sober state had vomited. Some of them even vomited directly on Su Shenxing, which made Su Shenxing feel very embarrassed. Just as Su Shenxing was about to extend his evil fangs at the unconscious girl, Mizuki Takemiya suddenly woke up. She looked at Su Shenxing with a frightened expression, then quickly got up from the beach and ran into the jungle not far away. This made Su Shenxing feel very hurt. Is my image that scary? Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he ran to the beach to look at his reflection. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief and fiddle with the ends of her hair. I'm not bald yet. Scared the hell out of me? Well, let's not worry about baldness for now. As everyone knew, the weather at sea changed very quickly. It was originally a sunny day, but now the dark clouds in the sky were gloomy and heavy, as if they would collapse at any time. It's raining. Su Shenxing looked up and found that the sky had begun to drizzle, and it was gradually becoming heavier. Really, where did that girl run off to? He sighed and walked into the dense jungle. Parting line. The girl hugged her knees and sat in a tree hole. What was she doing? Why was she here? No, before this, who was she? Mizuki Takemiya? That's right, I think that's my name. The swelling on her head continued to send waves of dull pain, causing the girl to cry uncontrollably. Although it was only afternoon in terms of time, the dark clouds in the sky covered all the light, making the whole world seem as if it had entered the darkness of night in advance. The sea wind whistled through the forest, making a woo sound. The raindrops were like bullets hitting the canopy of the trees, which sounded a bit scary. The crashing waves hit the island again and again, and every time they hit the outermost trees, they would be knocked to the ground. The sudden flash of lightning illuminated the surroundings in a ghastly white, and also produced a terrifying deafening sound. The thunderclouds were so close to the island that it was like a boat that could capsize at any time, making people feel insecure. Mizuki Takemiya tried to curl up her body so that she could squeeze into the narrow tree hole, and shivered inside. Dad Ray, she is so scared, the girl sobbed and whispered softly. Who was her dad? She didn't remember. She was just whispering subconsciously. This girl who had never received a real father's love, but from the bottom of her heart, she longed and longed for a father's care. It was probably because of this that she fell in love at first sight with Su Shenxing, who had once saved her. I finally found you. You really hid well. The sudden voice made the girl look up. Su Shenxing was standing there, and the raindrops that had turned into a torrential rain didn't even wet the corner of his clothes. The moment the raindrops approached him, they were bounced away by the cloud scales. At this time, a flash of lightning crossed the sky, illuminating the surroundings again, making Su Shenxing's face look as scary as a ghost because of the shadow. This made the girl even more scared, and her whole body trembled like a little quail. Except for fear and timidity, there was no other thought in her mind. Seeing the girl like this, even Su Shenxing felt like a bad guy who bullied a little girl. Afraid of thunder? In that case. So he sighed, broke off a branch from the tree next to him, waved it casually, and then fiercely chopped at the sky. In the next moment, the thick dark clouds in the sky were cut in half from the middle. The sunlight hung down like a curtain on a stage, making Su Shenxing, who was bathed in the sunlight, look like he was shining. If he was a little more bald, the light effect would be better. The dark clouds that were cut in half slowly separated, and finally fragmented. The world seemed to have regained its light. Dad. The girl whispered softly. What? Su Shinshing was surprised. But at this time, the girl had already rushed over. The cloud scales didn't move, so it seemed that the girl didn't have any bad intentions. Su Shinshing thought so. Ray, she misses you so much, the girl said in Su Shinshing's ear. In an instant, the silhouette of a silver-haired girl with dragon wings overlapped with the imperial concubine palace. But Su Shinshing quickly woke up and realized the seriousness of the matter. This girl seemed to have lost her memory. Chapter 139. Wu, Mizuki Takemiya obediently opened her mouth and waited for Su Shinshing to feed her. Su Shinshing reluctantly scooped up a spoonful of white paste and fed it into the girl's mouth. By the way, this is coconut pulp. Students who treat it as condensed milk should obediently face the wall and face the wall. It's delicious, Dad. Mizuki Takemiya chewed the coconut and said with a smile. Ah, is that so? Su Shinshing forced a smile, not letting the other party see that he was now distressed to the point of constipation. As long as you like it. After Mizuki Takemiya woke up, Su Shinshing could only give up the idea of taking her back to Fusang by ordinary people's high-speed rail, water version. According to Su Shinshing's observation, now Mizuki Takemiya not only lost her memory, but even her mind seemed to have become that of a child. Judging from her clear speech, her age was probably between 5 to 495 years old. In short, he had to first observe the girl's situation and see if she could return to normal after a period of rest. Otherwise, if he went back like this, he would always feel a subtle sense of guilt. Although it was a deserted island, to be honest, for Su Shinshing, as long as it was not on a star, it actually made no difference where they were, because if they were on a star, their clothes would be burned off, and he was tired of being a universe-level streaker. It was now their second day on the deserted island. After breakfast, Su Shinshing threw the spoon made of stone and the coconut shell into the sea. Anyway, for this guy, it was more convenient to make a new one than to wash it. Sure enough, she still wants to eat the lobster. Looking at the tide crabs crawling on the beach, Su Shinshing could not help but think of the big lobster he saw before. Dad! Behind him, she tilted her head in confusion. No, nothing. Su Shinshing hurriedly shook his head. I will go around to see if there is anything useful. You stay here obediently, okay? After spending a night together, Su Shinshing finally understood that this girl was called Mizuki Takemiya. However, other than this name, she had almost forgotten everything else. No, she wants to be with Daddy. The girl immediately protested. After looking at the girl for a while, Su Shinshing realized that she was unwilling to give up. He could only sigh. Okay, but you have to follow me closely, okay? Okay, Daddy, the girl immediately smiled sweetly. What a willful little fellow. Su Shinshing, who always felt that the little girl's happy look was as cute as a pet that was loved by its owner, couldn't help but smile a little. Therefore, on the second day after they arrived at the island, Su Shinshing took Rueishi to tour the entire island. As a result, the various wild animals on the island were extremely unlucky. Pretty things like fur or feathers were all caught by Su Shinshing one by one under the girl's instructions. Of course, it was different from being caught by Bear Grylls. In the end, except for the little rabbit that became barbecued meat, the other creatures at least kept their lives, although Rachel was against it at first, after Su Shinshing told her the story of how the rabbit repaid its benefactor's kindness, the strange fairy tale where the rabbit jumped into the fire to feed its benefactor, and after some persuasion, the girl eventually accepted the setting that little rabbits were meant to be eaten. In addition, the barbecued rabbit meat with sea salt was unexpectedly delicious. Su Shinshing felt that this might be related to the region, but this made him miss the ISE lobster even more. A day passed in the blink of an eye, and now it was the third day of living on the deserted island. Mizuki Takemiya's condition still didn't improve. Considering that Lee couldn't leave Su Shinshing for too long, if there was no change in the fifth day of the Imperial Concubine Palace, then he could only obediently go back. Today, for some reason, Mizuki Takemiya agreed to Su Shinshing's request to stay alone in the camp. Although it made Su Shinshing feel a little relaxed, It also made him feel a little disappointed. Dividing line. After watching Su Shinxing leave the camp, the girl took a deep breath and gave herself a pep talk. There was only one goal today, and that was the ISE lobster. She remembered that yesterday, her father seemed to unconsciously mention this word several times. Although Mizuki Takemiya had no memory of the past, his knowledge didn't disappear because of this. Just like many amnesia patients, even if they lost their memory, they still knew how to use the toilet. The girl was very clear about what the ISE lobster looked like, even more familiar than the barbecued rabbit she ate yesterday. Therefore, she left the camp set up by Su Shinxing and went to the beach not far away. At this time, the sea was in the low tide period. The beach was full of shrimps, crabs, shells and other gifts from the sea. However, the girl didn't stop, but walked on a winding tidal path, observing the situation at the bottom of the water while walking towards the big reef not far away. Not long after, she actually found an ISE lobster hiding in the shallow coral reef. Although she was a little afraid of the ISE lobster with a pair of big pincers, thinking that she could get her father's praise, the girl still rushed forward without hesitation and caught it before it escaped. The strength of the ISE lobster was unexpectedly great. The girl struggled with it for a while before successfully catching it out of the water. But when she wanted to turn back and go back along the path, she was dumbfounded. Where was the winding path in the sea? Not only that, even the reef she was on was in a state of drowning at any time. But even so, Mizuki Takemiya still didn't leave the ISE lobster behind. She curled up on the reef, looking at the beach, waiting. If it was her father, he would definitely come to save her. The sea water rose higher and higher, and even overflowed the surface of the reef, forcing the girl to stand up. A big wave hit, and she was completely drenched. Even though it was summer, the young girl couldn't help but shiver as the sea breeze blew through her wet body. But even so, she still held the lobster tightly. Dad? However, there was still no one on the beach. Gradually, the hope in the girl's eyes began to fade. A feeling of déjà vu emerged in the girl's heart. It seemed that her father had let her down time and time again in the past. Didn't I tell you to stay in the camp? Just when the girl's heart was in a mess, Su Shinxing's voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Imperial concubine Rueishi immediately came back to her senses and looked at Su Shinxing, who had appeared beside her at some point. After a while, she raised the ISE lobster in her hand and stammered, "I heard Dad say, you want to eat this." Su Shinxing looked at the dying ISE lobster in the girl's hand in surprise. After a long while, he sighed with a sour nose. He rubbed the girl's wet hair. "Idiot. This kind of thing can be caught at any time, but what if something happened to you?" "I'm sorry, Dad." The girl's expression dimmed, and she lowered her head in disappointment. "But, thank you." Su Shinxing saw the girl reflect on herself, so he revealed a smile and said, "Tonight's dinner is lobster." "Dad." Rueishi raised her head in surprise, and then threw herself into Su Shinxing's arms. "I like you the most." On the fourth day of living on the deserted island, Su Shinxing's whole body swelled like a pig's head because of a severe seafood allergy. But this wasn't the most serious problem. Perhaps because her body was wet from the waves yesterday, and she was exposed to the cold wind for a long time, Rueishi had a high fever since last night. Chapter 140. Su Shinxing touched Rueishi's forehead, trying to feel her temperature. But he soon gave up this meaningless action. Now his senses were slightly different from ordinary people. Even if he jumped into the lava, he wouldn't feel very hot. If an ordinary person had a fever that was 3 or 4 degrees Celsius higher than normal body temperature, he wouldn't be able to tell. Not to mention, the swelling caused by the seafood allergy also made his senses a little different. But this didn't prevent him from judging that Rueishi's current physical condition was very bad. In this kind of wild fever, if the right care was not taken, it could easily turn into pneumonia, and if it was more serious, it could even endanger her life. This made Su Shinxing feel a little bit of a headache. Because the girls he met before were either the kind of warriors who could continue to fight against monsters even if they were stabbed, or the kind of magicians who had a very good grasp of their own physical condition. Even if they were sick, they could cure themselves. At the very least, they were like Qin Xingyan, Chihaya Fukuyama, and the kind of people who had undergone cultivation or had special bloodlines and didn't get sick easily. But Mizuki Takemiya was different. Not only was she an ordinary girl, but she was also pampered since childhood. It was not strange to call her a flower in a greenhouse. Naturally, there was no way to compare with those guys. Dad. Half asleep and half awake, the girl trembled and reached out to Su Xinxing. Su Xinxing quickly took her weak hand. The warmth from the hand, which was much bigger than the girl's, made Mizuki Takemiya smile and fall asleep. Su Xinxing stared at her haggard face. After a long while, he whispered to himself, "This time, I will definitely protect you." After that, several layers of protection invisible to the naked eye were superimposed on the girl's body. Su Xinxing found some vines in the woods, twisted them into a rope, tied the girl behind him, and added some protection to the rope to prevent it from breaking. Then he went to the beach. Today's weather didn't seem to be very good. The sun couldn't be seen in the sky, only the rolling clouds looked a little gloomy. The direction should be this way. After confirming the direction of Fusang, Su Xinxing exerted force under his feet and jumped to the surface of the sea. Before gravity could pull him into the water, he was already running wildly on the surface of the sea. The white shockwave, which symbolized supersonic speed, appeared beside him in an instant, but Su Xinxing was not satisfied with it. Instead, he exerted more force on his feet and left the shockwave far behind him in the blink of an eye. It was not until a few seconds later that the sound of breaking the sound barrier was heard. Because of his astonishing speed, a deep gully was directly plowed out on the surface of the sea. Only after he ran for a while did the gully slowly close, and because of the collision, high waves burst out. However, these waves could not last for too long. Almost at the same time, the violent airflow would destroy them, followed by high waves. At the same time, the staff of the Fusang Meteorological Bureau immediately discovered something strange through the satellite image. Tanaka-kun, it seems that a typhoon suddenly appeared in the Pacific Ocean. Don't be silly. The typhoon period is long over. No, it's really a typhoon. Moreover, they are advancing towards Fusang's territory at an extremely fast speed. So, holy *T, what's going on? When the man called Tanaka-kun saw the satellite image, he was suddenly stunned. There was indeed a group of things that looked like a typhoon moving in this direction. Is the satellite broken? Even a typhoon can't be so fast. This is far faster than the speed of sound. What should we do now? What are you waiting for? Hurry up and issue a typhoon warning and ask the people to take refuge. At this rate, it will take at most 10 minutes for this thing to reach Fusang's territory. Su Xinxing was completely unaware that his behavior had made the weather bureaus all over the world shout, "Unbelievable, what the F***CK, and what the F***CK. He just continued to run towards his destination. It didn't take long for an empty beach to appear in front of him. There were many sun umbrellas, drink boxes, sunglasses, yoga mats, swimsuits, sunscreen, and strange rod-shaped objects that made buzzing sounds on the beach. It seemed that the people had left behind them when they were in a hurry to take refuge. Su Xinxing slammed on the brakes. The powerful inertia caused him to directly cut the beach in half, and he was buried in the sand from his waist down. After confirming that Rui-shi was not injured or showed signs of waking up under the protection of the protective shield, Su Xinxing looked back at the sea. In the distance behind him, he could see an astonishingly huge wave sweeping in this direction. The wave was about 30 meters high. Although its speed was much slower than Su Xinxing's, its speed was still more than 700 kilometers per hour. If this thing was left alone, Fusang would probably suffer the greatest tsunami damage in history. And not only Fusang, but even the China, the Cosmic Empire, and other places across the sea would probably suffer an astonishing loss. And this wave was only the first wave. When Su Xinxing was running, due to the difference in speed, he had almost caused dozens of waves of similar power. At this moment, these huge waves were lined up and roaring in this direction along the path he was moving forward. Therefore, Su Xinxing could only delay for a moment. He casually pulled up a metal sun umbrella on the beach and put it away. Then, like playing a baseball, he fiercely swung the bat at the approaching huge wave. The sun umbrella instantly burned out due to the friction with the air at an extremely high speed, leaving only the part that was held by Su Xinxing. However, the huge wave on the sea seemed to have hit an invisible wall and shattered with a bang. The originally turbulent sea also seemed to have been shaved off by an invisible force in an instant. All the waves were instantly shattered by an invisible force, and the waves completely disappeared. The entire sea surface was as flat as a glass bead. Perhaps since the birth of the sea, this moment was the calmest moment it had ever been. It was not until a few seconds later that the sea surface wrinkled with the sea breeze, and new waves were stirred up. At the same time, Su Xinxing did not care about the stunned meteorologists around the world. He quickly followed Mo Li's breath and rushed back to the White Bell Shrine. In the past few days, Wu Yejin would go to the White Bell Shrine with work whenever she was free. While dealing with the affairs of the student union, she waited for Su Xinxing's news. Thanks to her, after Su Xinxing rushed back to the White Bell Shrine, he met her, who was still in the shrine because she had not received the asylum notice. Although Su Xinxing had not said anything yet, under her orderly arrangement, Mizuki Takemiya was very efficiently admitted to the hospital. So, now, can you please explain what happened? After everything was settled, the girl breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at Su Xinxing, who was still swollen, and asked, "Why did sister become like this?" Su Xinxing thought for a moment and then answered very seriously. "It's fate." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.